All right, shalom, everybody. May the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in Yahweh's sight. He is our strength and our Redeemer, and it is in His name, which is His authority, that we pray, praise, proclaim, protect, and protect this message. Amen. Thank you for everybody for being on, getting all these platforms up and going real quick, so we can get ready to go in. I'm thankful for you guys being on with us again. Let me see something real quick. All right. Everyone, having been led as we believe, this is part 21, and we're going to talk about sacred. That's what we're going to talk about today, being sacred. Being sacred. Right? And I'm not even sure, this might not necessarily even be, this might be a little more motivational than sometimes this can be in the rising sessions. Nevertheless, we're going to make sure that we get into this correctly. Having been led as we believe, part 21, and we're going to talk about things being sacred as we continue to grow and go forth in this year, which is now we're transitioning from our year of pursuit into the year of living inside of that which we have pursued. I'm thankful and grateful for another opportunity to be with you all again. And everybody who's listening to this live or watching this live or watching this later on, we appreciate you giving your time, talent, effort, energy, etc. to be able to help us and bless us, be a blessing to each other. We know this will be a blessing to you, and we are excited to be in front of each and every one of you and spend some time with you. Thanks for spending some time with us. And, we're talking, and those who are transitioning, coming over from the early riser Bible study as well. We're thankful and grateful for those who got up with us at 6:45 a.m. Eastern New York time. Some of you 6:30 a.m. Eastern New York time. We're excited. We're thankful and grateful and blessed for the opportunity to continue to grow with each and every one of you. And so, we're getting back to the series, and having been led as we believe. Once again, this is part 21, and today we're going to be dealing with. Sacred. What is sacred? The reason why we do what we do, it's not just because. It's not just because it sounds good or it feels good or whatever. It's not just because it's, as some people will call it, religious activity or cult-like behavior, whatever. There's culture involved. So we are a cult in a sense because we're a culture. We come from a culture, right? But we're talking about having been led as we believe. Once again, this series, too, by the way, is not something that's there to say that you're evil if you don't agree with everything, that you're not a good person if you don't do what we do or whatever. It's not a thing to say that if you don't agree with every word that I say, you'll be taken off of here. Matter of fact, as long as you're respectful, we respect any questions, comments, concerns. And I know we'll get some of the same questions, comments, and concerns that we get every single time. And that's fine. People that are going to come on some of the same stuff, it's a white man's religion, or, make fun of something as far as my clothing or my hair or my face or whatever, or have somebody tell us that we're about slavery because the Bible condones slavery and all these things, because people don't comprehend culture. And I get it. However, we just ask that, you be respectful. We're thankful to the moderators that are going to help us on different platforms. And we want to talk about this from the kingdom perspective, the proper perspective. That we should always be talking about it from. And we're going to treat you with respect. Hopefully you'll do the same with us. And we're thankful and grateful to everybody being on. Shalom to everybody. So today we want to talk about sacred, right? That's the term. That's going to be the key word we're going to use and talk about on our session on this rising. Thank you, Pastor Jairo. Hopefully we'll have some stuff sent to you guys. I know it's been a while, and we've been doing so many things and focus on trying to get land. So we haven't been able to send everything over to you, but prayerfully we'll have some stuff to send to you guys over there in Kenya. Please let our babies over there know that we're praying for them and everything still. And we're thankful, grateful. We actually have some donations that are coming in from some classes that we'll be able to send some stuff to you guys very soon. So shalom to everybody once again. And this is part 21. So, of course, you can go on YouTube to catch up with this. You can go on the podcast, FindKofi, Ofori podcast. You can do all these things. You can be a Satanist and listening. I'm not worried about that at all, because the message would still be the same for us. Once again, this is having been led as we believe. So you can listen in. I also know that some Satanists are not necessarily people who say they believe that they're following Satan, but some of you are people who say that you basically don't believe in a higher power or a spiritual power or etc. Some Satanists actually believe in Satan or whatever. Either way, we're prayed up and we're ready and we're thankful for an opportunity to speak in front of everyone. And prayerfully, this can be a seed that helps and blesses. We just ask that people be respectful. That's all we ask, right? Okay, so. So what we're going to get ready to get into is, once again, this term that we use, which is basically sacred. What does this even mean? And this is one of the issues that we have. So I'm going to go ahead and put up, we're going to look at a quick definition of, just real quick, real brief. We're going to look at what does it actually mean as far as when somebody says sacred. We're going to use even modern definition, right? And I apologize because sometimes it zooms in, so it's hard to see. But basically, it's talking about, when you're sacred, being connected with, they would use the term God. We don't really believe in God. We believe in Elohim. We've talked about those differences. There's difference between God and Nature and Elohim and other deities, things of that nature. Nevertheless, since we speak, English and have remnants of other people's culture and language still, we say, there's something that's connected with Elohim or God or gods and is dedicated to a religious purpose and so deserving veneration. The word veneration, by the way, is just simply a way of saying that it deserves respect, right? In ancient English, so to speak, they would call it fear, to respect or to make sure that you are lifting something up, giving it the proper reverence. So that's what the term sacred, even in modern terms, is talking about. It's talking about being connected with Elohim or dedicated to a religious purpose and so deserving veneration, right? So in other words, it's respect. We respect this thing. If we say something is sacred, we're saying we have extreme respect for it. We have a lot of value for it. We believe that it's something that people should respect. And we believe, once again, the series being called Having Been Led As We believe that it's sacred because it's somebody who created it. Okay? I'm sorry, somebody said we're reactive biological beings removed from nature, overpopulated. The species is getting stupider while a small percentage is getting smarter. Religion keeps people dumb. Well, religion, by definition, just means what you repetitively do over and over and over again. And to make a decision that somebody is stupid just because they don't hold your belief is something that's very limiting as well. Matter of fact, it's ad hominem, right? Apologetically, it actually causes people to go into the Dunning-Kruger effect and to think that just because somebody doesn't agree with you means that they have no way to think. That's usually part of the problem that we have. That's where you get things. I'm not talking about you personally, but that's where people get things such as white man's burden, lost cause rhetoric, things of that nature, because we won't listen to somebody. And I'm thankful to the Most High. Once again, also thankful for my wife being on, the Honorable Bloom and Flourish. You can follow her, not A&D, but the letter N. You can follow her on TikTok, YouTube, and website at Bloom and Flourish. And she's a herbalist, a healer, a chemist, and a biologist by degree. And she helps people to be able to be healed. And so please be with her. I'm sorry, babe. I'm having a tough time with the name of the tincture of the month. But if you'd like to get the tincture of the month, hopefully she'll put in the comment section for me. I keep wanting to call it something different. I know I'm wrong what it's actually called, but nevertheless, we thank you guys. And a lot of people will make an assumption about people, and they'll assume that we have no thought process on it. Like somebody will say, because I don't believe in evolution, for example, because I believe in something else being sacred, they'll say that therefore I don't know what evolution is. But I can talk about the 6 forms of evolution. I can talk about authors of books, not all of them, but I can talk about many authors, even if I can't remember their names. I have read many different books. Matter of fact, people believe that I must be stupid because I never learned some of the things they're talking about, and don't think about the fact that or don't even know that I was agnostic, right? But a lot of the stuff that we have an issue with in this thought process and what we're talking about today is just because usually people don't comprehend what it is that we consider to be sacred, right? And so that's usually the fight, is somebody saying they hold something sacred and we hold something sacred. You have to. These terms that people don't like, even when somebody was saying the universe, this, that, or whatever, the word universe literally means uni, a verse, single, or a spoken sentence. So you're talking about a single spoken sentence. That's what the universe is. Now, if you're saying that there's no universe as far as what the Most High created, then you believe that what other men have told you in their spoken sentence, and so you live out of theirs. Either way, we're dealing in a single spoken sentence, and both of us have to have faith in that single spoken sentence that we decide to be in, right? And so depending on whose culture you're taking on, or who you want to believe, or whose writings you want to believe, you're believing a single spoken sentence. Okay, so I think we went over, what was it? We didn't go over Second Chronicles. Well, yeah, Second Chronicles. I think you gave me a wrong verse on Second Chronicles 22. I think we went over Second Kings 8:26 or something like that, didn't we? If I remember correctly. We can try and briefly fit in which Chronicles now? Chronicles 22:2. Is that First Chronicles? Is that Second Chronicles? We can try and fit that in, but these are things that you have to talk about. I'm sorry, you said tell your family and friends to stop working and let's start a revolution. If you have a place for my family and friends, to make sure that they're going to be taken care of. That's why we're working on getting this land and stuff together now, but I'm not going to tell people to go to war and we're not ready. Malcolm X talked about that. We're not going to tell people to go to war and be ready. Killer Mike talks about that. Don't tell these babies be out here without any forms of doing anything, and you don't have anything to take care of them. Tell them to go ahead and fight, and you don't have the weaponry. Tell them to make sure that you forget about this and just go, your own land or whatever. If you're ready to do that, if you have it set up where everybody's going to come together and everybody's going to stop working and people are going to be fed and everything, let's go do it, right? But life is too sacred for me to tell somebody to be in a position they can't take care of themselves. That's what we're going to talk about today, is sacred. Thank you, babe. My wife said the tincture of the month, I am immune. I'm going to get that in my head. I am immune. I'm sorry, babe. All right. You said the universe is a natural wonder, not a supernatural. Supernatural, by definition, is still natural. Super just means it takes natural to the next level. Supernatural. Superfluous. It's just taking it to the next level. Supersede. Doesn't mean that it didn't seed. It means it supersedes. So it seeds, but on a level that's higher than the other level. Right? That's all we're talking about, right? We're talking about words correctly. You said, when did the revolution start? Which revolution? All of them are revolution. All of them are bloody. You said Second Chronicles 22:2. Okay, we can talk about that real brief, and then we're going to get back into what we're talking about today, which is sacred, right? Second Chronicles 22:2. Oh, I mean, yeah, so we started talking about this yesterday. What was it? Okay, hold on. I mean, I don't understand what is the question. I think that's what I asked yesterday. What is the exact question that you're asking for? I mean, there's a lot of different things in this. Are you talking about what? I don't understand what the exact question is. I think that's what I asked yesterday. Right? Are women supposed to preach? Women can preach. The Bible never says that they can't. Don't forget about, even in New Testament, there's really no such thing as Old and New Testament. Somebody made that stuff up. But even in this New Testament thing, you look at Second John. Second John is written to a woman whose name is Lady, and she's elected to be a pastor. And he's telling her what to tell the congregation. So that right there. Who was, when Christ came back, it was women who went and told the disciples and everyone that he had came back. The woman at the well, she went and preached to others and that weren't even Israel, and told them that Christ was here and that he was more than just a regular prophet. Deborah, was a judge, and men wouldn't even go to battle without Deborah. The list goes on and on and on about women who were in positions of authority. They still had to be wives and things of that nature. And but we talked about this in our early Rise of Bible study today. It starts with Adam being in position before Eve can even be brought to Adam, right? Because Eve is somebody that her position needs to be protected. A woman's number one need is to be secure. Right? And men love to be heard and respected. That's our number one need. So those things are already there, for us. Yeah, we got to build infrastructure, things like that, so they can't storm. Well, I mean, At the end, you said we grow our own vegetables and fruits. Okay, if you guys do, that's what we do as well, and that's what we're working on. And hopefully we'll have some land even before, when our goal is to get to 50 acres. Looks like we might have some other people willing to help us out with some stuff too. But yeah, you said the revolution. Yeah, so let's see. Yep, we're looking at solar energy, most definitely. And if you got that, that's great. Separation of self, government is a revolution of its own. Right, governing yourself. That's what we were about. So you're asking how old was he? I'm not, you're talking about in Hosea, you're saying? How old was he? Or it says he was 42 years old. If that's the question. It says he was 42 years old. And how many years was he in the role? I don't know. I'd have to study that part, in all honesty. That's not hitting my memory right now. But I don't know. Maybe I can look at that at some other time. If that was the question, if that's a two-part question. So it says he's 42 years old. I'm not sure just off of memory right now how long he ruled. I'm sorry about that. You got COVID? Well, prayerfully, you're able to go through some things. If you need some help as far as natural medicine and some other things, let us know. And we'll try to get back to you. Oh, that reminds me, I was supposed to get back to somebody a while ago about something. I had to look through my text. Anyways, yeah, so long story short, we're talking about sacred stuff, all right? Back to what we were talking about, not to hopefully be somebody who's coming off the wrong way to you guys, but to kind of get back where we were. We are talking about what is sacred. And if something is sacred, how do we treat something that's sacred? And that's one of the issues that we have, is that a lot of people are trying to look at things and not look at it as it being sacred. The reason why I get up and speak to each other is because what I'm speaking to me is sacred. What's sacred to you is what you're going to keep. What's sacred to you is what you're going to make holy, set apart, be one with, etc. All these terms that we use, that's what sacred is. Right? Growing up, going on TikTok, talk about their fantasies is cute. Yeah, and somebody having to deny people's their fantasy or whatever. Somebody who's the fantasy bubble burster is cute too. I guess that's all you have time for. That's funny. Hopefully you'll be able to find something better with your time than to try and, bust people's fantasies. I hope you go to little children and tell them that the Easter Bunny and Santa Claus and the Tooth Fairy and all that's not real as well, so they won't become grown men that do what you say I'm doing. But anyways, it was nice having you on. But these are things that, we have to talk about. And even what this person was doing just then, trying to say, oh, you're just in fantasy, this, that, whatever. There, once again, you're dealing with people who don't understand what's sacred and why it's sacred. Hey, Shalom, Minister Tamer, how you doing? Yes, Yashra does love me. Yahan, thank you. So sacred, it's holy. We become home with it. We become one with it. And whatever is sacred to you is what you're going to defend. What is sacred to you is what you're going to live by. What you're sacred to you is what you will hear, is what you will listen to, is what will cause you to even sometimes divide from certain things, right? Luke chapter, is it Luke 12:51? Is it Luke 12:51 through 53? Let me look and see just to make sure. I think it's Luke 12:51. Yeah, where Yashua says, don't think that I came to give peace. Right, but that he said that there's going to be, when you tell the truth about things, mother and daughter are going to be against each other, and father and son, and mother-in-law and daughter-in-law, and father-in-law and son-in-law, right? Truth causes people to be divided. And you got to figure out what's sacred to you and what you will keep sacred, even when the division comes. Even when your family says, this isn't what I like. Right? Even when your family says, I don't like the fact that you're doing this or doing that. When your community is in a certain place, right? I put out a video about this yesterday, that when people ask, why are you trying to talk to people who don't know this and let them come out by themselves? They should pull themselves up by their own bootstrap. They think that you're following something different. Why even talk to these people? Well, I'm not going, just because I don't we differ in opinion doesn't mean it's not my people. And it doesn't mean that their life is not sacred, right? Their life is sacred to me, even if they don't think that it is. Even if they want to say that I'm doing something that is not sacred to them, my belief in their life and that they need to reach certain levels, and they need to be able to talk to certain things in their life and change the way that they think. It's sacred to me. Right. Once again, sacred is talking about something that's connected to Elohim, and is dedicated to a religious purpose, which religion is what you do every day, right? Or it's the things that a legion of people repetitively do, right? So people can be, eating, drinking, smoking, running, etc. Those are all religious activities by definition, right? And so, we are doing everything in our power to be in a position in which we are keeping things that are sacred to us so we can help people, right? That is a sacred act. This is the reason why, by the way, that a lot of the stuff comes in as far as like sexuality. This is one of the reasons why you had an argument with that, right? We believe that what you're born at is sacred. Somebody else believes that what they think about what they're born as is more sacred. It's a religious activity on both ends. You have faith on both ends. We have faith, and our hope is, because faith comes out of your hope. So our hope is that our hope is in who we were created as. Our faith is then in what we hope in, and we begin to walk in who we're created in, and therefore we get a manifestation out of that. That's what we consider to be sacred. When somebody says, why do you guys talk about racism? We talk about racism because if somebody's born as whatever they're born as, doesn't matter what they're born as, right? Whatever they're born as, it is sacred. Because also what is sacred is something that you can't change, right? A lot of stuff, like the unchangeable things, are usually the things that are sacred. If you're in sin, those things aren't sacred. Why? Because you can change them. Thank you, Nika. Appreciate it. Right? So we consider certain things to be sacred. Once again, this is having been led as we believe. So this is not me saying I'm going to put you in heaven or hell, because I can't do that anyways. Right? But having been led as we believe that something is sacred. So, when somebody is coming to somebody and says, I don't like you because you're black, or says, I don't like you because you're white, or says, I don't like you because you're red, or whatever terms we have for people, I don't like you because you're yellow, all these different descriptions people like to use, well, that's dealing with something that's sacred, and that's why we come against it. We come against it because it's not sacred. Supreme Rising there, Dawn, how you doing? So if it's not sacred, then we come against it, right? If it's sacred, we protect it, and we live inside of that which is sacred, right? Protecting our women is sacred to us because they are sacred. So we protect what is sacred. So if somebody comes on and speaks of our women, I'm going to defend our women. Watch this, ladies. Also, if somebody comes on and says something about our men to us are sacred. They can't change who, as far as physically who they are. That's something they were created to be. That says, do you not know that your body, right, this flesh, this male or female form, is simply the temple of the living Yah, right, of living Elohim. So I will protect that which is sacred. I must protect that which is sacred. Right? Is it sacred to you? Is it something that you have extreme veneration for? That word veneration, once again, meaning respect, reverence for. Right? If it's sacred, I also set it apart. And if it's set apart, it means it has to be protected wherever it's placed. Why? Because once again, it is sacred. It is sacred. It is sacred. You hear what I'm saying? It is sacred. If it's not sacred to you, you're not going to protect it. Right? That thing you're called to do. That's why we talk about your calling. Your calling is sacred. If you've been invited, that's what the word called means. If you've been invited to do something that nobody else on the planet will ever be able to do outside of yourself, that means that we've got to protect what you've been called to do. You got to learn how to protect it. You got to first learn what it is, and then you got to learn how to protect it. If not, then it will continue to fall and crumble and go through a lot of issues, and people will try to get you off and all these different things because you cannot protect that which you don't comprehend is sacred. A lot of people do a lot of things. Amen, Minister Nice. Yeah, your calling is sacred. Thank you for the likes and the gifts and all that, by the way, too. We appreciate it. It helps us with the algorithm. And thank you very much. Right? So your calling is sacred. Yes, your calling is sacred. Your temple is sacred. A lot of people do things not knowing why they do it. If you don't know why you do it, you might not even know if it's sacred or not. So there's a lot of people that are going to celebrate Christmas, have no clue what Christmas is about. And then when you tell them, then they get mad at you when you say, I don't celebrate it. Why don't you celebrate it? You're a Scrooge, you're this. They start giving you ad hominem, start trying to make fun of you, start telling you why you're not good enough, all these things. And the reality is because they don't comprehend that that's not sacred to me. Saturnalia is not sacred to me. That's sacred to somebody else. You're misappropriating somebody else's culture. If you want to be somebody who's in the Norse theology, or you want to be somebody who's in the pagan theology or whatever, then be pagan, right? Because it's sacred. Like Christmas is more sacred to pagan people, and the people who celebrate Saturnalia, and the people who are in the Norse theology, and the people who are, into a lot of Eurocentric things. I try to say white people. I said Euro, right? A lot of people don't understand the difference, right? There's a group of people who hold those things to be sacred. Right? I'm not going down to New Orleans or to Brazil, whether you call it Carnival, or the time of whether you call it Carnival, or whether you want to call it Fat Tuesday, or whether you realize what Lupercalia is, right? For the 40 days of Lent and all that stuff. That's not sacred. That's for somebody else. There's 40 days before Passover, though, that I know I'm supposed to make sure I start getting the leaven out of my house. That represents getting the sin out of my house, right? But people don't comprehend what's sacred. If you don't know what's sacred, then you will do anything. If you don't know why you're doing something, if you don't know self, remember we talked about that, there's a difference between self and control. If you don't have control, there's self-control. You need self-control. But if you don't have knowledge of self, all that's left is control. And many people cannot control themselves, which means you're being controlled by someone or something else. Shalom, Christine, how you doing? Thank you for the agreement line. Then it said, always here, you don't believe in Elohim, right? Reason Mama says, yes, people are always getting upset with us for not celebrating Christmas. Yeah, and it's because of what? The whole thing about it is what? The whole reason for that is what? The whole reason is because it's not sacred. They don't understand that we don't realize it to be sacred. We protect those things that are sacred. Right? Once again, if it's sacred, it means that Elohim has told us we're supposed to do these things, and so we follow them and we respect the law, in essence. Yeah. So without self, there's no self-control. That's real, and a lot of people don't know. And so, right? But if you don't know, like yourself, this is like, think about this. You are sacred. You got to be thinking about that. I am sacred. I am sacred. So who is somebody to tell me not to be me when I am sacred? I'm set apart from who you said. That's why your word says things like you are a peculiar people. I always mess up that word. Peculiar, really. But everybody says peculiar. But peculiar person. You are a peculiar person. Right? You are a peculiar people. Sacred. Now, if you don't know who you are as a people, though, and you don't know what's for you, Willie Lynch syndrome, we take away sense of self. And the only thing that's going to get people to get back to themselves, he says, if they have tangible evidence of who they are. Because the second they have tangible evidence of who they are, the second that this is not the things that are spiritual are no longer mystical, but they become practical, and people get a sense of who they are, now this system is in trouble. Be in the system but not of it. Now this system is in trouble. Why? Because you're not a part of it. You're not funding it anymore. You're not funding it with your time. You're not going to give it the same time and energy and stuff that you used to give. I can't give the system the energy that I used to give it because I comprehend what it is. Look, I used to be in the United States military, and I gave this system a lot. I gave it my life. I was willing to, rather, give it my life. Right? But I don't have that effort or energy to put into something that I know is not for me. It's not for my people. It's not for my people, whether you're talking about Israel or those grafted in, whether you're talking about African, whether you're talking about European, whether you're talking about South American, anybody who is like-minded, this system of oppression is not for them. Because all of us are sacred. Now, you can decide to be in what is sacred, or you can decide to be part of a system. But the government that doesn't even tell you the truth, that there's two different constitutions going on. A government doesn't even tell you the truth that you should be sovereign, but tells you that, hey, to be in the public sector, which is basically be in the government sector, is more important than being in the private sector, which means you can have ownership. There's only two types of people that own. You're either in the private or you're in the public, but they don't teach you that. They don't teach you that being private is sacred, because if you have something that's private, you can protect it, and legally they have to protect it, and they have to protect your private interest as well as their public interest. which means that the military will only serve you if you're taking care of yourself privately. The police officers only have to protect you if you're taking care of your private interests. If you do you not know that if somebody were to take your purse, if you were walking down the street and somebody were to take your purse and you tried to run after them, you couldn't get it or whatever, and you saw a police officer in the corner, you said, "Oh, that man, he took my purse. He's running on the street. Can you go get it?" That police officer does not have to, by law, does not have to do anything for you. They can choose whether to help you or not. If they decide that it is of their interest, of public interest, to help you, then they can go ahead and do so. Right? That's the government that you live in. That's the system. I'm not trying to tell you every police officer is like that, but hear what I'm saying. I'm telling you, if it's allowed, if the system allows for that, there's something weird about that, is there not? No matter what the color of your skin might be. There's something weird about that. Is that not? Right? So we want to come out of a system to where that choice can even be made. We want to come out of a system to where that choice can even be made. Anubis said, "My soul is more sacred than my flesh, but have to resist the flesh for my soul." Oh, there's a bunch of stuff in that conversation we could talk about right there. He said, are you feeding what's sacred or man's customs? Right. And that's what we're talking about. When we're talking about something that's sacred, it's something that is, when we're talking about something that's sacred, we're talking about something that is, it's something that's set apart, and it's something that we're supposed to reverence. No, nobody's ever told me that. I don't know who that is. You said, "I'm sorry, I give my one flag." Oh, okay. My flag is Yeshua HaMashiach, or the standard. The flag is Yeshua. All right. Nevertheless, so thanks for that. We appreciate it. I get what you're saying. So we have a lot of people who won't hold things sacred, right? Celebrating things and not talking about the fact that we're celebrating things that are not sacred, or they're sacred for someone else. Right? It's like when people talk about, Easter. Why do we not do Easter? Ishtar is not sacred to us. She's not sacred. Nimrod's not sacred, and neither is Tammuz. So we don't celebrate them. We don't worship them. Halloween, Dia de la Muerte, is even something that the Roman Catholic Church and some other churches in Mexico and other places similar will go ahead and be part of Halloween, which is why you're trying to do Harvest Day and trying to say Harvest Day is on the same day as Halloween. It's not. But because people want to try and make something sacred, they will bend over backwards. They will try their hardest. And once again, part of the argument that we're having is it sacred in the first place? People aren't keeping their marriages. You know why? Because marriage is not sacred. Marriage is less sacred. We say this all the time, so please forgive me for those who've heard me say this many times, but I will repeat it again. It is easier to get married than it is to get your driver's license, right? You can get your marriage license easier than the driver's license, easier than a license to cut hair, easier than a license to style hair, easier than a license to do nails, easier than a license to tattoo, which means that in this culture, it is easy, it is more acceptable, it is more thought of, rather, it is more guarded, right? They're more concerned about a tattoo, right? They're more concerned about your hair. They're more concerned about whether it's cut or whether it's styled. They're more concerned about the person who's going to put some colors on your nails. They're more concerned about that than they are about marriage. You can go get married overnight, but you can, right? You can go online and simply say that you're part of an organization and then start marrying people. State by state by state. You can do it. There are a lot of people who marry people who have not gone through any training on even how to do marital coaching or counseling or whatever it is that these people might do. They don't even know how to do those things, but they can go online and quickly just click on something, be able to marry you and say that you guys are good for the rest of your lives and not be able to train you on what marriage is. They won't even tell you. In our culture, you're supposed to be pre-married. In other words, you're supposed to be a husband before you get married. You're supposed to be a wife before you get married. You're supposed to know what a father is, a mother is. You're supposed to be, your community is supposed to say that you're qualified, all these different things, right? But in this world's culture, you're just supposed to go ahead and say, hey, we've been having sex long enough. I guess, I like you, you like me, whatever. Let's just go ahead and walk down the aisle. That's all it takes, right? It's not, marriage in this culture is not sacred. Of course, marriage doesn't work. Of course, people are saying, I don't think I'm built for marriage. Of course you're not, because you're in a culture that says marriage isn't sacred. Of course, you see certain cultures with 75% divorce rate because it's not in your culture. Hey, Shalom, how you doing, Iron Grid? And go follow Iron Grid when you get a chance. He got some nice stuff he's been saying on TikTok. If you're on TikTok, Iron_Grid50. He's on here right now, right? You said everything is sacred. Not everything. Life is sacred, but I don't believe murder is sacred. You know? You see what I'm saying? Not every you have to figure out what is sacred. You said, tell you I'm an Israelite, I'm an Israelite. What does that even mean? Does that mean that what I'm saying is wrong now? I don't understand. Yeah, that's more dating than marriage, right? And dating is something different than marriage. People are prepared to date, which is basically you go, like, think about this. I want you to understand even the words we use, right? Right? There's a time and a season for everything. Yeah, I mean, there is, but killing somebody, you can say, okay, is that sacred? Is that a sacred act? Is that something that, you know, is out of necessity? There might be a necessity to protect your life or your family's life. You might have to kill somebody. It doesn't mean, though, that when you kill somebody, you just go, oh, yeah, I'm glad I killed them. They deserve. No, like, that's a life that was taken. The life was sacred. And their blood is still talking to the Most High. Just like Abel's blood cried up from the ground. You know, the life is still sacred. Even if the life is taken, even if the life, you found it, whatever, it was necessary to protect your family. You know, I was in the military, and you know, you had to be in a mindset to take something that was sacred. One of the reasons why I don't necessarily want to be in there. I still have to have that mindset. If push comes to shove, somebody going on my property, trying to get at my wife or my children or anybody who's under my protection, they ain't going down like that. But it's sacred. I want to do everything in my power to make sure that I don't have to go down that road. You know, but you know, it's about what's sacred. What a lot of people don't comprehend it to be sacred. So if you don't think of marriage being sacred, then of course your marriage rate is where it is. If you know, think about it. All the problems that are going on, and I'm going to focus on the United States of America. I know we have people on different platforms all over the world, you know, but I'm going to deal with this, and thank you to everybody who's all over, you know, Facebook, IG, YouTube, TikTok, the podcast. We appreciate you for being on. And we're going to talk about what's being sacred. Like, I can tell whatever's sacred in your culture by the result. I can tell what you keep sacred and what you don't think is sacred by the results. Obesity is a problem, which means, right, cancer is a problem. You know, not being healthy, asthma. Forgive me, I'm forgetting the other term I'm trying to use. A lot of our young black boys are dealing with it, but people all over dealing with it being not dealing with or autism, things like that. I can tell that health is not sacred when you have all those different things. I don't believe the earth to be flat like a pancake, but I don't believe it to be a sphere. But that's, you know, we can talk about that maybe a little bit later, but I'm focusing on the being sacred, right? I can tell what's sacred to you. I tell people this all the time. Like, if somebody comes to me for financial coaching and stuff, you know, I can tell what's sacred in your life by simply saying, hey, you know, what's your checkbook say? You know, what do you pay for? What's your bank account say? If it says McDonald's quite a few times, I know that health is not sacred. You know, if it says, you know, if on there it says that you got all these video games, but you're telling me you can't pay your rent, you know, I can tell what's sacred. Right? I can tell, you know, what's sacred to you by what's there. No, I don't know about that term. I've never heard that term, sacred geometry. Or if I have heard it, I've forgotten about it. You said, okay, I got something that's relevant to the topic. All right, All right, his neighbor says, what do you want to sacrifice for what you deem sacred? There you go. And if it's sacred to you, you will sacrifice. Matter of fact, you got to deem it and then redeem it. Because every day somebody's going to try to deem what you deem as sacred as something else. At some point, when do you get into redeeming process? You know? Do I believe only in Jewish books? I believe in books of Israel and Hebrew books, and they're not always one and the same. But I don't only believe in them. I believe in books, but I believe in truth. I believe in contextual facts. I don't believe in facts just by themselves. I believe in context as well. I don't believe in context just by itself. I believe in facts. Right? You got to put them together. Right, that's what makes something sacred as well, is that the context is there as well as the fact. A lot of people will give you a fact without context. Therefore, it's not really sacred because you don't respect it enough to give the context to it. A lot of people will give you a lot of context, and the context sounds nice, but then won't give you facts to back it up. So therefore, it's not sacred to you. You don't respect it enough to make sure that the contextual facts are there. Right? A lot of us are in a position to where we're not thinking about these things correct. We're not honoring these things correctly. We're not reverencing. That's what, once again, this term here, veneration, that's over my shoulder. This term veneration, it literally means to respect it, to give it credence, to by your actions show, right, that you've arrived in a place to where you believe this thing to be sacred. Right, even by the modern definition, that's what sacred is. People believe the United States of America is sacred, so they will defend the United States of America before they'll defend the human beings in the United States of America. Right? It's sacred. That's why, and I'm thankful to the moderators. That's why we have moderators on here, because we believe that treating people with respect should be something that's sacred. Right? Veneration, once again, meaning respecting. And so if people can continue to come on here and disrespect one another, we got to make sure you're gone, because you're not treating this as something that's sacred. Right? Like, even when we say somebody should have a safe space, if I'm talking to somebody doing some life coaching, I say this is a safe space. What I'm saying is what you say here, and the fact that you're willing to come to me and have a discussion with me about whatever we're to talk about, it means that it's sacred. And so if it's sacred, I need to treat it as such. Hey, grace and peace to you, TJ. How you doing? You said, do I believe that polygamy is sacred also? No, I don't. Are you coming from a place to where you're going to say in the Bible there's polygamy? Because in the Bible, Yah never was okay with polygamy. He never sanctioned it. There are people that did it, and there never was really anything, there was never any marriage that had multiple partners that ended up working out for the best. So that's something that was not sacred to the Most High then. It's not sacred to him now. It's not sacred to me now. It's not sacred to my ancestors then. And even people that are ancestors, not just my biblical ancestry, but my ancestry goes to Shwe, to Ashanti, to Mali, to Kemet, and that's just one side. I could talk about Taino, Cherokee, Olmec, etc. I could talk about that side as well. Nevertheless, in all those cultures, when it happened, people didn't really like it. Sometimes they go, well, we'll accept it because at least they're marrying kingdoms together, so we'll act like it's okay. But the reality is it's never been acceptable. So, I'm not into polygamy. Exactly. Like Minister Tamer said, polygamy is adultery. And it's actually a lot of Willie Lynch thinking, right? You put two men in a room, you put two girls in a room, sometimes even put a bag over their head, and they don't know who they're having sex with. Matter of fact, even a lot of people, I know there's a term that term was used prior, but a lot of people who started using the term more modern times as mother effer is because you had sometimes where mothers and sons didn't even know that they were having sex with each other, and they would just let them do it to have fun. Then they take the bags off and have these people be freaking out, and they'd have children, that had problems because of it or whatever. Right. So, but yeah, we don't, nowhere does the Bible support polygamy. Matter of fact, unless it's adultery concerned, and we would hope you could still find a way to work it out. But unless it's adultery concerned, when it comes to marriage is sacred. So we don't believe in divorce. If somebody's putting your hands on somebody or something like that, there's a little bit of difference in there. We don't condone that, but nevertheless, marriage is sacred. Marriage is defined as being two people coming together, a husband and a wife, not a man and a wife, not a man and a man, not a woman and a woman, not a child and an adult, not an adult and an adult, not a child and a child. We're dealing with a husband and a wife. You said polygamy coincides with nature, even in the animal kingdom. You don't think we should that should teach us? I believe if you're going to do that, then you got to be complete in that, because first of all, I'm not an animal. But secondly, if you believe that the animal kingdom, this is when we talk about sacred, what's sacred to us, right? So we should probably leave animals where they are and leave human beings where they are. Not probably, we should. The reason why we should do this is because if you're going to use that as an example, it's still incomplete, because there are animals that are not polygamous and they stay with one spouse the entirety of their lives. And if there's some animals that if their spouse dies, they actually, you see them get, stop eating and stuff, and they end up dying too. There are some animals that do have a bunch. of spouses, whether it's females having a bunch of males coming at them or males having a bunch of females that they defend. So if you're talking about the animal kingdom, you're talking about a whole bunch of different animals and a whole bunch of different things that do things differently. But I don't equate to an animal. I'm not an animal. Now, if you believe that you are an animal, then that's part of a culture thing. Culturally, that's what's going on. Hey, I'm Shalom Angelic Discipline. How you doing? Right. So if we're going to do that, we got to think about culture. Right. If you consider yourself to be an animal and you put yourself in the animal kingdom and you're doing the evolution thing, right? You usually dealing with macroevolution in that sense. Then okay, I guess you would use that as your reference point. My reference point would be different because what I consider to be sacred would be different. Right. I don't think about when monkeys do things or whatever that's how human beings should do them. I don't think about if a lion has a pride, even with a lion pride, like you might have multiple males or whatever, and the brothers are fighting against each other because sometimes one brother who's designed to have sex will want to have sex too, but he can't have sex because the brother who's supposed to be in charge doesn't. So he might fight his own brother and try to get his brother to submit to him to make his brother realize that he's not supposed to have sex, but that male lion's going through some things because he should be allowed to have sex. So there's a lot of stuff. We're going to bring the animal kingdom in, then let's be honest all the way. If we're just going to say we shouldn't learn from the animal kingdom, or we're only going to look for polygamous animals, why not look for the animals that make sure that they're together? So at bare minimum, if we were just use that, not even bring Bible into a bare minimum, we should say, well, everybody has a choice as to what they want to do. And by the way, if you're going to be polygamous, right, that means that your brother should be able to live in the same house with you if you're using a lion. Or what about if you're going to use a gorilla? You should have a bunch of males that are around, and if the males try to do anything, you should be able to beat the brakes off of the males that try to touch your women. And you should be allowed to kill them. But they should also be trying to kill you. And if they kill you, they should be able to take your wives, and your wives shouldn't say anything about it because that's just the way it's supposed to be. Or if you want to go off of snakes, well, you should have one woman and she should be, more powerful than all the other men. And the males should go ahead and come around her and just have a big orgy one day. And then all of a sudden out of that, they should be able to, have children or whatever. You won't know who the father is, and why worry about fathers and being married and doing any of that? I mean, which animal do you want to take? We gotta have a conversation about which animal. Do you want to be like some pets, where pets it's chosen for you who you have sex with because we want to keep certain things bred together? I mean, people did that to us already. We already went down that route. I mean, it depends on what's sacred. Depends on the culture you're coming from. So just to say I'm going to pick and choose the animals that support my decision, if you're an animal, I mean, maybe you should. And maybe this is part of the problem. Some people go from I'm gonna be polygamous now, and then I'm gonna be, I'm gonna be poly this time. I'm gonna be mono this time. I'm gonna make sure I have, I do it like lions do this time. I'm gonna do it like I would do snakes, double-minded, triple-minded, quadruple-minded, quintuple-minded, et cetera, right? We get to a certain point where it's like you can just do whatever you want, and that's what a lot of people like to do, is whatever they want because they come from a culture to where you can be, so to speak, God. You can do whatever you want. But if you believe, it to be sacred, why not deal with that? But it depends. You said not saying you support polygamy, just saying. Well, once again, and thank you for the question. I'm just saying, saying it depends on what the culture you're coming from. In our culture, we come from a thing where we believe we're human beings. Now, if you believe that a human is the same or had to come from something else, then maybe that's your stance. And that's what you believe. That's why the series, this is part 21 of it, by the way, so we have other things you can catch up on to see where we're at this point. Nevertheless, that's why there are, that's why we haven't been led as we believe. We don't believe that we're the same as animals. Matter of fact, we believe that we named the animals. We authorize the animals to be what they are. So why would I go to that which I authorize to now tell me what I'm supposed to be? It's a different culture. You said, I heard it somewhere, it's not Father, Son, and Spirit, but Father, Mother, and Child. Is that true? So it depends on, once again, culturally. Usually all these religiosities, even Kemet, which comes from Nubia or comes from Cush, and Cush is even coming from another perspective as far as, being married to Ishtar. A lot of people don't know that. But Ishtar, Nimrod, and Tammuz. Tammuz died, by the way, so he wasn't the chosen son, so to speak, but that's where you get that from. Father, mother, and son. And she got that because a lot of people knew about the Shiit's Gimel, which we would call Genesis chapter 3 nowadays because we speak another language. And in Genesis 3, it says that, because of what Adam and Eve did to sin, that there would be a woman, right, who represents Israel. If you actually study the dreams and things of Israel, because it's a continuous conversation that goes all the way through Revelation. You're talking about Genesis, you're talking about Daniel chapter 2, Daniel 7, Ezekiel 1 and 2, Zephaniah, Zechariah, Malachi, Isaiah, Except I'm missing a few people, but Yashua and Matthew 24, or Matat Yahav 24, but Matthew chapter 24, all the way over to 1 Corinthians 11, and dealing with even going into Revelation. You're talking about a continuous dream, continuous conversation, people going further and further, deeper and deeper into it, and seeing that Israel is the woman, that Yahweh is Abba, Father, and then a son comes out of that, right? But a lot of people do Mother, Father, God principles. That's where a lot of people have the moon, Ishtar, still being goddess, the goddess that came from the moon and an egg. That's where you get the Easter egg from. So, like, you're having a lot of people that are playing on that, and they believe that they don't even know what's sacred to them. That's why you have a lot of churches who will say that they're Christian, right? Where Christianity is not necessarily always matched with the Torah or the guide, right? So you have a lot of people that are Christian that will do Easter egg hunts, or will celebrate Christmas, or do all these other wild things that have nothing to do with their religiosity, so to speak. So, but the Father is representing the Most High. The Mother is not actually representing who people try to get you to worship, because they want you to worship Madonna, which really isn't the same as Mary, but they try to put Mary and Madonna in the same class. And that's why a lot of people don't know Madonna is as a goddess. Miriam is the woman who was the mother of Christ, but they just kind of put the two together, right? But you have the Father, who's supposed to be out of Israel, is going to come this Son. And so a lot of people do that. Now, if you want to get even deeper into it, though, here's another rabbit hole for you to go through in your personal time. In Israel, in Hebrew, in original Hebrew especially, but even in modern Hebrew, for the most part, there's some people that would argue this, but in Hebrew, whenever you refer to the Holy Spirit is always referred to as a she, right? So the Father is a he, the Son is a he in the flesh, but the Holy Spirit is a she. Now, interesting thing about this, though, is that there's neither male nor female in heaven. So when we're dealing with heaven, what's sacred to us in heaven is not based off of male or female. There are masculine and feminine spirits, right? And matter of fact, masculine and feminine spirits are in everything and everybody in heaven, or even in the spirit that's inside of your body, right? But we're dealing with something different. What's sacred to us? It's cultural. A lot of people are trying to get you to do things outside of your culture, or outside of the culture that was originally intended. Shalom, Betty. How you doing? Yeah, Minister Chairman, exactly. We're not animals, right? So a lot of people will go to the place of animals, especially because a lot of people have faith in evolution, right? And so if you have faith in evolution, then your humanity is not really sacred, because you're no more than an animal. Matter of fact, that's what, if you read about Darwin, right, book we always bring up, but the book that everybody reads out of and bases evolution off of, the fifth form of evolution. There's 6 forms, there's 6 types. But when you talk about the 5th type of evolution, you're talking about macroevolution, and that's where Darwin gets his book from. Darwin, his book is literally titled "The Theory of the Origin of Species: The Theory of Evolution," and then read the rest of the title: "The Struggle for Survival for Favored Races," which means that he wrote a book. By the way, the only degree he has is in what's supposed to be sacred, which is supposed to be in the kingdom. He's supposedly supposed to be a preacher. That's his only degree, is in theology. Never had a degree in science. Didn't know really what he was talking about. Today, the same way people tell me, how dare you talk about stuff you don't have a degree in, right? As if I can't study things and listen to people and be around people who are scientists to tell me what's up. But nevertheless, the same way people will come at me, they don't come at Darwin. Darwin is supposed to be doing what I'm doing, but he wrote a whole book to tell you why racism was acceptable. That's what his book was about. Then his younger cousin, saw what he did, liked it so much, and his cousin's father, who, his sister actually married Darwin. So Charles Darwin's wife was his own cousin, but his male cousin liked Charles Darwin so much and what he did that he actually wrote a book based off of his book, and it was a book on eugenics, which is where eugenics comes from. It's cultural. So when we have this conversation, we're not even understanding when people are saying you come from an animal, you're usually using Darwin. And when you're using Darwin, what you're doing is you're using somebody that wrote that book, not to tell you that we came from animals just to say things are okay. He wrote that book as part of a religion that helped white supremacy. So if you're going to quote Darwin, anything that's Darwinistic, you got to comprehend that's why it's there. You got to comprehend it's directly attached to eugenics. You got to comprehend the people that put it out are people who wanted to continue manifest destiny and the white man's burden as not just a rhetoric, but a way of life, something that they kept sacred. They thought that white flesh, even though the color white just mean, or the term white actually means colorless, clear, or bright. But nevertheless, they wanted you to believe white was an actual color, and it was a color that was attributed to an actual person, rather than tell you that a white person is an artificial person, because there's no such thing, right? I mean, you can't be clear. If you're clear, right? You can say you have no pigmentation, but to be clear literally means I can see through you. You're translucent. Anybody that's translucent, that's a scary thing, right? If I can see through you and see your organs and stuff, something's wrong with you, right? But they wanted you to keep something sacred that's artificial. You see, so a lot of people are going through those things, and we're having artificial arguments based off of artificial thought process, based off an artificial culture. This is what people mean. They don't really know how to break it down like that, but that's what people really mean when they're saying that America has an artificial culture. It really has no culture, because it's based off of a lot of the artificial. Birth certificate, straw man, artificial. You got to use Social Security number as a form of identification. However, it's illegal to use it as a form of identification. Artificial, right? Like the United States Corporation is different than the United States of America, right? 3002-15A tells you that. Artificial. We're dealing with a lot of things that are not sacred. They are artificial. They're not coming from Elohim. Artificial. People will tell you what a universe is and tell you that there's nobody that created the universe, but the word universe is literally a verse, spoken sentence. So if somebody didn't speak the universe into existence, then it couldn't be a universe. So if you don't believe it's a universe, you should stop calling it a universe, because unless you're saying you and your scientists are telling you what is a single spoken sentence, and that is what people don't want to talk about. What you feel is more sacred is what somebody else told you through their culture. When somebody else through another culture says, well, I believe in something else, you say that what I feel is more sacred is more important than what you feel is more sacred. So you'll tell me, how dare you talk about the Bible? You use it to oppress people, while then telling me that my child has to learn through school your system, because your system is sacred. By the way, this is problematic because they don't tell us that, your teachers can actually teach about the Bible in school. People think your teachers can't. Your teachers can. All they have to do, now depending on the state, how it works out, but depending on the state, all you have to do is make sure that whatever teacher wants to teach it, you just have to have enough petitions. So if we have teachers in position who want to teach about creation, as far as how we believe, and what we believe is sacred, we have the right to have it taught, just like they have the right to have what they have taught. Right? But they don't believe in what you believe to be sacred enough to even tell you that you have the opportunity to do that. If everybody should have their rights protected, that's what law is supposed to do, then why is it that you're not teaching people about the laws that help to protect their rights? And why do people get mad, right? Then the people that don't believe in what we believe in, they say, oh, that's terrible. Why are you doing this? Why are you forcing my child to learn blah, blah, this and that? Like, no, your child has every right to learn whatever they want. They don't have to go to those classes. They don't have to go to that teacher. They can learn what you deem sacred, and we should learn what we deem sacred. That's what sovereignty is all about. If you believe homosexuality is the way for you, and I don't believe that homosexuality is the way for me, right? And if you believe your children should be taught that way, and I believe my children should be taught something different, then we should have places that are sacred for both of us to go. Freedom of religion, because as much as you don't want to talk about it, the reality is that a lot of things that people are calling science are religious, right? That's why even some sciences are not even considered to be an exact science. They'll have your child go to school, but then tell your child this is not an exact science. Well, then it's not. I mean, why are we considering this to be sacred if it's going to change? You're still teaching my child about gravity, but gravity was something that Sir Isaac Newton, by the time he died, didn't want his name attached to. That the theory of relativity that was given by Einstein, that helped him win that Nobel Prize, and he disproved that gravity with the theory of relativity, and the theory of relativity was disproven by another theory, and so on and so forth. But when's the last time your child was taught in school? Heck, when's the last time you were taught that? He said Shekinah is the woman who is the wet verse receiving the faith of prayer. Prayer is sacred. Okay. All right. I'm not going to. He said, I was told all his children is saying his name wrong, and it's him when we speak. I didn't catch what you meant by that, McCoy. I'm sorry. If you can say that for me again, or type it up for me again. And thank you for everybody on all the platforms for being on. We appreciate you. Thank you for being on this rising. Light Tower says, central to his thought is Shekinah, the divine presence, the bride of HaKadosh. Okay. Father, mother, daughter, and son, all relationships on the tree of life are examined in great detail. Well, the Holy Spirit is referred to as a she in Hebrew. So are you saying that it's two women married? Because if it's a she, but also too, there's no marriage or being given away in marriage. So that's another belief system. I would say that's another belief system because we've been taught in our belief system there's no male nor female in heaven. But I'm not here to down the belief system, etc. But you said who determines what is sacred? We believe that the Most High does. Just like who determines what's sacred when your children go to school? Do you? When your child goes to school, do you determine what that child is going to get an A in? Or do you just tell that child, do your homework so you can make sure you get an A in it? Do you determine? Do you get to determine what your child is taught about in sex in school? Or does somebody else come up with the, come up with the syllabus, come up with the curriculum? And you have to allow your child to be in it. Do you determine how your child learns how to drive? Or does the government say this is what your child has to do in order to get a driver's license? Right? A lot of people aren't sovereign. A lot of people don't do, a lot of people don't homeschool. So we got to be real about it. Like when we say who gets to determine who to be sovereign, I mean, who's determining? When people say, "Oh, I determine my child's stuff" or whatever, okay, so your child gets the grades that they get or whatever. Like, who grades them? I get to teach my child and stuff, and we decided what college they're going to go to or whatever. I mean, who accredited that college? We go to a HBCU and we're making sure that they learn things. I mean, who accredited the HBCU? Who started the HBCU? Because a lot of historically black colleges and universities were not started by historically black people. Those are questions that we got to ask. If we're going to ask questions, let's be holistic in our questions. No, thank you, Treats by Day. Appreciate that, yeah. And a lot of us learn outside of school more than we learn in school. I learned a lot more outside of school than I learned in school. I learned a lot more outside of college than I learned in college. I continue to learn a lot more outside. Heck, I learn a lot outside of the lives, even though while we're doing this, I learn stuff myself as we talk through it. There's stuff that you guys ask me that I've never really contemplated, and I use, those things that are inside me. The Ruach HaKodesh, she uses those things to bring to my remembrance. Hey, Shaft. Hey, Shaft, how you doing? Yeah, had to start a whole new channel. They taken down the last two channels, so we had to start a third one. Matter of fact, we got to start on the fourth one, just to make sure that if something happens again, we can already have a live setup and everything. So you guys look forward to that. There's so many different things we got to make sure to keep what's sacred, right? Nevertheless, though, thanks for finding us again. Appreciate you. If a person is a Moor, why don't they have to get a driver's license? If a person is a Moor, if a person is a non-citizen national, if a person is a freedman, etc., it means that they are not in contract with the United States corporation. So, by the way, you don't need a license either, technically. You have to know how to do it legally, but you don't need a license technically either. You don't have to have license plates. To have a license means that you are permitted to drive. Now, you can still have a driver's license, doesn't really stop you from much, but nevertheless, like, you got to know the language even. Like, you don't drive, you travel. Like, traveling is something that any natural man or any natural human being has the right to do. You can't stop somebody from traveling. You can't. You can't stop somebody from traveling anywhere in any way, shape, or form, unless it's a privilege or a benefit. But if you're traveling with yourself behind the wheel, then it's not a benefit that the government gives you. It's not a privilege the government gives you. You're doing it yourself. Now, riding on the plane sometimes be a little different. Getting on a train or bus might be a little different at times. But you can travel however you see fit, right? So being a Moor is something that's different. But that's somebody whose life, even legally, is considered to be sacred. A person who's part of the corporation, their life is not considered to be sacred because you're an artificial person. You can be treated different. You see, this is all going back to being sacred. This is why we teach what we teach and live how we live, because we believe these things to be sacred, to be connected with Elohim, and we respect what he says because of the purpose that he gives us out of it. That purpose is daily manifestation. There's daily manifestation that happens, and so we respect the process. We love the process, and because we do the process, we get a lot more done. That's why we hold these things to be sacred. Even when we hold these truths to be self-evident, we're just saying we hold it to be sacred. What is the end goal? Plan for holding sacredness. What is the end goal? Sacredness is not the end goal. Sacredness is not what holding something sacred is basically putting something in position. The goal is the vision, right? So like the vision for us, for example, overall, if you will, is to make sure we can take care of our children's children, to make sure that we have food that we're growing on our own land. If people want to live on the land or just have a spot reserved on it, they can. A place that if we want to meet together regularly, we can. A place that allows us to now have equity and people can come on there and save some money, get their own land for themselves, right? So now you can use it to flip into something else where we can continue to make sure other land is there, to start going state by state by state by state, having places that are similar, and having our own community, to make sure that Israel is sealed. And therefore we can make sure that anybody graft in or the remnant or whatever that's being attacked, they can come on in and be like-minded. Common law, law of equity, law of first mention, common law, law of admiralty, comprehending even how maritime law works, universal law, remedial law, all these different things that are out there, procedural law, substantive law, private law, public law. These are all things that we're moving towards. That's why we even have classes that we do. Our next semester is going to be, starting January 31st. But that's why we even have classes that we're going through to make sure that people can speak their own language, that people can even speak some other languages. That's why we're even going to be teaching French and stuff, because you should know other languages. And by the way, a lot of African places, they speak French, so if you want to do business in other places, you should know Kiswahili, you should know French, you should know Afro, you should know, other languages. You should know your own. You should know how to say Osayu instead of having to say hi. That's native. That's Cherokee. If you're Cherokee, you should speak a little bit of Cherokee. You should know thyself. The more you know, the more language you know, the more culture you have. And your culture should be sacred. Therefore, your language should be sacred. Why is it that somebody else's language and culture is more sacred than your own? The way that you use terms should be sacred. Why is it that you have to use somebody else's version of your etymology if you originally came up with the word? So holding something sacred is not the end goal. Holding something sacred helps us to get to the end goal. It helps us to develop, holding something sacred helps us to develop the habits that we have. If you have a culture that's sacred, and therefore you have a belief system that's sacred, and therefore now you treat things emotionally sacred, your emotions are sacred, where you're not just getting emotional just because, but you're getting emotional due to a culture that informs you even on how to do things emotionally. The more sacred something becomes, the more you respect it. Once again, a lot of people don't have self-control because they don't have knowledge of self. If I take away your sense of self, then the only thing left is control. A lot of people are controlled because they have no sense of self. So when we get to a place to where we now comprehend what it is to have self-control, we're in a different position. You can respond however you want. The question mark box, just make sure at some point when I go through the questions, I can see if I've gotten all the questions. Right? But and once again, this is a series. It's called Having Been Led as We Believe. You don't necessarily, I'm not assuming that everybody's going to agree or believe in everything that I'm talking about. That's not what this is for. That's why I believe those that have ears will hear. That's why I believe those that have ears will hear. I believe, once again, those that have ears will hear. So if you have ears to hear, then hear. If this isn't something that, you agree with, or you can hear, or you can ascertain, or if it sounds like it's a whole different language or something, then, right? But being sacred, once again, it talks about, speaks back to that culture. And a lot of people aren't dealing with culture. Everything's coming from a culture. Everything's coming from a culture. Everything's coming from a culture. And the reason why we proclaim or preach sovereignty so much is because sovereignty is saying that you have the right to go back to being a private citizen and actually being protected by law versus having to do what somebody else tells you all the time. Being a sovereign also means, once again, you sovereign. You reign over something. So you should have finances coming in. You should have food coming in. You should be able to control your environment. Yeah, those are great. I've been trying to get into patois for a second, but I haven't really gotten trained. Maybe you can help me with that or whatever. Okay. You look pretty.
Oh, thank you.
So yeah, what about books not in the Bible, Enoch, things of that? We believe that you should study those. Study to show yourself approved. And then pray about it, bring it before the Most High. Right? That you can be a workman, need not be ashamed, right, at dividing the word of truth. When you're bringing it before the Most High, you're bringing it so he can make sure he tells you the culture is correct. Because there's a lot of people that will talk a lot of things about Enoch. That's one of the reasons why I'm very careful about it, because I get a lot of questions that usually aren't even necessarily coming from our culture. It's usually somebody else telling you about your culture. So it's kind of hard to get into the conversation. Probably in our early Rise of Bible study, we're going to, start putting a lot more about Enoch in there, but we have to even be careful the version that we use, when it was written, who's giving you the commentary, all these different things, because it's cultural. It's like the Bible, like you can have a book. People who believe in the Book of Mormon, they have a Bible that goes with the Book of Mormon. So if you have a Bible that goes with the Book of Mormon, you're going to have your Bible is going to say some very interesting things, right? Because the Book of Mormon is not going to agree with our Bible. The Book of Mormon is coming from Joseph Smith. Joseph Smith believes that black people are cowards because they didn't fight for or against Yahshua. They didn't fight for the devil or against Yahshua. Therefore, or who he calls the Mormon Jesus. And so, since we didn't fight for him, we deserve to be black. And so, if you see anybody that's black, it means that they're a coward. And that Elohim, which is not the same Elohim we worship, but that Elohim, his version of it, which is basically supposed to be somebody who was once a human being or an alien, became Elohim, and Elohim calls us cowards. Right? You said one thing I found out, many Jamaicans don't know the worth of their language, and all the African dialects around it. Yeah, patois especially, even Haitian people. My people are Jamaican, but I never really learned it. Or some of my people are Jamaican, I never really learned it. But yeah, there's a whole bunch of stuff, especially when you're dealing with the Caribbean. A lot of people that came to the Americas had to first come to the Caribbean first and then go over. So when you're talking about a lot of us, we're all the same at the end of the day when it comes down to it. Right? And even holding that humanity, being oneness, is sacred. They're Taino, I'm Taino, right? I'm Taino, of course, too, through them, because my grandmother's Jamaican. My maternal grandmother's Jamaican. But nevertheless, like, if you're Taino, if you're most of the natives on Turtle Island, you're pretty much Taino, which is going to take you back to Olmec. And if you're talking about Olmec or Tainos, you're talking about people who have been blood relatives with Africans. If you want to go back to Pangea, or if you don't want to do Pangea and you want to talk about when we traveled over in different times in history. Your grandfather's from Ghana? That's great. Yeah, I'm Ghanaian as well. We're Shui, but or I don't know if you're talking about ancient Ghana or modern Ghana. Either way, kind of, sort of the same place. Not really, but kind of, sort of close, somewhat. But those are things that you have to do. We're talking about something that is sacred. If it's sacred, then you will treat it different. You will hold it up to a different perspective. You said you barely know English because none of us speaks the Queen's English. Well, not just that. Anglo-ish, that's what it is. So a lot of people don't even speak Anglo-ish. Matter of fact, the Queen doesn't necessarily speak Anglo-ish either, or even proper English, because all you got to do is go to 1611 King James Version, see if the Queen spells or speaks any of that. She kind of sort of does, but she kind of sort of doesn't. It's English, kind of sort of like the Anglos used to speak. But the original Anglo people, they were massacred for the most part. So you have little mixtures of those people in, but they were pretty much killed off too. It's this is not just an American issue. This is not just a black-white issue. It's a issue with people having a lack of humanity. That's really what's going on. So, but it comes once again to what's sacred. People don't think enough about life, about language, about culture as being sacred. That's why you have the fight that people have as far as, once again, going back to, I already mentioned this, going back to homosexuality. Somebody gets mad and says, why don't you just support it? Well, it's like, I say this, well, I can love the person, but not like the sin. Well, how can you do that? It's impossible. We'll go into something I put on one of the TikTok videos. If somebody's in water, right, and they're drowning, if I go into the water, I'm going into the water for the person. I'm not going into the water for the water. I don't want to drown either. But if I can swim well enough to get through the water, I'll swim through the water to be able to help the person and get them back on dry land. And then when they're on dry land, then that's when you can administer CPR or whatever else might be necessary, right? But I can't do that while they're in the water. So I got to go through the water to get to the person. So the same thing, like if somebody's dealing with any sin, I'll go through the sin. I won't do the sin, but I'll swim through the sin. I might go in the system. I'm not of the system, but I'll go through there. I'll rescue the person, right? Or give the person the chance if they want, because they have to accept being saved, right? So I'll do whatever I can to help the person. And if they want to come on shore, then we can go through the salvaging process, getting them back to what they're supposed to be, but it doesn't mean that I have to believe everything that they believe is sacred, right? And it doesn't mean that I want the person to drown. And that's what the weird thing is people have this weird belief that it's like, because I don't, I tell people this all the time, think about it. There's not, especially, can we be real and honest? Like every single, I won't say every single one of us, but let's say a lot of us probably know of somebody in our family or some close friend or whatever, somebody you worked with, whatever, to where you had a relationship with this person and you treated them with respect. However, this person, was LGBTQ plus, whatever you want to call it. And whether that person came right out and told you, or you knew it, but they didn't want everybody else to know, or whatever, like it was known what this person is, as much as they were trying to hide it. And just because you weren't homosexual didn't mean that you didn't think their life was sacred, even if you didn't think the homosexuality was sacred. So, but people get in these weird arguments because we don't understand what being sacred is. Like, your life is sacred. So just because I feel like you're not doing something that's sacred doesn't mean that I will void your life, right? Or I am devoid of the ability to be empathetic to your life. You know what I'm saying? Thank you, Sister Betty. Yeah. I was trying to get that out on the video I did, and I never really got that out. That's what I meant to say. I don't know if it came out close to that on the video. I didn't say exactly that, but that's really what I was thinking. Sometimes we're given something that's hard for us to articulate it. See, Anubis said American English is a mishmash of several languages, most definitely. And Shaft says every people that is pretty much native were decimated. Yeah, that's true. I mean, yeah, for the most part. I mean, a lot of us are surviving and don't know what we are. So really, even when you decimated people, even though you can physically kill off people, usually what happens that's more important to the person trying to take over you is usually they have to, colonize your mind. You said is a ruling class mentality sacred? No. Well, put it like this. I guess you're saying a kingdom mentality. It depends on the culture. Once again, whose kingdoms are you talking about? Right? We always do this weird thing where it's like, we're against tyrants, we're against kings. That's what the Constitution was about. But then all these people who said they weren't about that, they were friends with the king. And after the Revolutionary, which was really a civil war, right? But the Revolutionary War ends, you see them going back to England like nothing happened. And, they were having tea with these people while they were fighting. And they had slaves. That's what the fight was really about, was that England was saying that basically, like, not only are we going to tax you, that's what they focus on, but they don't want you to focus on the fact that George Washington and those folks, the first 4 out of 5 presidents, by the way, Virginia slave owners, and all of the presidents who lived on the White House. Washington, D.C. was a plantation, and the White House was the manor on it. That's what it actually was designed to be, right? If you look at how it was built, what land was given, the color of the house, the slaves that were on there, the overseers that were on the land, right? Nevertheless, you have to talk about the fact that, who's your rulership? Who is your rulership? We do this weird thing where all cultures rule people the same way. And that's why when people say, yeah, see in your Bible, it talks about slavery. It's like the word slave didn't even exist when the Bible was written. And they came out of slavery, if you want to use that term, out of Kemet, And you had Kemetic people who came out with them, and people that were part Kemetic, and people who had learned that there were classes of slaves, if you want to use that term. And so they had to create law to make sure that life that was sacred, right, would not be messed over by people who were trying to enslave and take away the livelihood of others. So you had laws to make sure you protected and treated people who were not slaves, but they were indentured servants, which is what you are. When you have a job, right, you're talking about something you're trying to equate to the wrong thing. You need to talk about when you have a job. When you have a job, you're an indentured servant. If I sign a contract with somebody to work for them or do some work with them or whatever, then that we're talking about indentured servitude. Both parties are going to say, I'll serve you if you do blah, blah, blah. Okay, I'll serve you as long as you do blah, blah. That's the contract. And once our contract is over, we can either renew the contract or we can say, thank you very much. We got what we needed out of it. You go do your thing. I'll go do mine. So it depends on whose ruling class you're talking about. To say that Mansa Musa ruled the same way as the Pope did is foolishness. To say that, to even look at the court, Mansa Musa got in trouble by, I always forget his name. IBN is his first name. I forget his last name. But the only thing that we really have I won't say the only thing that white people like to accept that's written by him was by a Muslim. And a Muslim guy came over and Mansa Musa got in trouble. Mansa Musa, by the way, the king before him, his brother, is actually somebody that's important in the telling of the Muslim story as well. So you should study Mansa Musa and the culture of Mali to see how Muslims actually, the closer they get to Muhammad. Right, that's a whole other thing, right? If you want to talk about what's sacred to them, you should actually go down that road and down that path. Nevertheless, Mansa Musa got in trouble by him, or not in trouble, but the guy couldn't stand it because Mansa Musa would allow black women to walk around and they had their chests exposed. And they was like, well, how do you do that and you're a Muslim? He was like, well, we don't force our beliefs upon people. So I'm a Muslim, right? And reality is a lot of people who were even kings, they would become Muslims sometimes, not even just out of belief only, but out of the fact that there were wars that were happening with people. And sometimes the wars were about, some people misuse the Muslim faith, just like Christians misuse the biblical faith to be able to, to basically, say God wills it. Right? And to say we can go ahead and we can take over this land or that land, or we can take over Israel, or we can do this. Well, the same thing was going on. So sometimes they did it for that. I think Mansa Musa, though, especially if you look at the history of his family and everything, he probably believed it, but he never made people force them. So if you wanted to follow Yahweh, you could follow Yahweh. If you wanted to follow Allah, you could follow Allah, even though Allah and Elohim are actually a lot closer than people think. Nevertheless, if you wanted to do those things, you could. We ruled differently. And even when people talk about slaves and stuff, well, slaves were either prisoners of war, people that were still trying to kill, or murderers, or people like that, because we didn't have prisons. So when you talk about prison today, right, that's why prisoners are what? Prisoners are slaves. 13th Amendment allows for them to still be slaves. 14th Amendment citizenship still allows you to be a slave, right? So when you talk about prisons today, they didn't have prisons. They didn't have a prison complex system. So if people did stuff that was wrong, you had some punishment, either indentured servitude or what you would call slavery, even though they didn't use that term either. It's a different culture. So, you have to look at the ruling class different. When you say, do you believe in the ruling class? Do you think that that's sacred? Well, whose ruling class are we talking about? I believe that I should be a king. I have be able to rule my home well and should work towards having a micronation. And I believe that we should do that on a higher level for all those who are like-minded and want to be with us. So that would make us kings and queens of our own destiny. We'd be private. We can call ourselves whatever you want. You can call yourself a Moor. You can call yourself a follower of the way. You can call yourself a kingdom citizen. You can call yourself whatever. At the end of the day, you should be able to reign over your own environment. And that's what the definition of capitalism is anyways. Capitalism is a system in which politics and economics are used to control trade and industry. Trade and industry is controlled by private corporations. Private corporations, they control the state. That's the definition. So if that's what they do anyways, if they don't want to call themselves rulers, see, that's the trick. That's why you have to know it's tricky language, right? It's legal terms. That's why we're about law. Look up the head of a state. The head of a state, you would consider the president to be head of state, right? Even though he's just a puppet, right? There's real kings and then there's puppet kings. Like Rome would conquer all these different lands, and then they would say, well, you can be the king of this land, but they still have a governor. So how are you the king, but there's a governor that's over you? Is because you're a puppet. Whatever the government said, the governor is going to represent the government. So whatever Caesar tells the governor is going to tell the king, and the king is going to tell the people. But the king is really controlled by the governor, who's controlled by the Caesar. Okay, so the same thing happens, right? What is the head of state? The head of state, if you look up this stuff, you'll find out that a head of state is basically considered to be the same as an emperor, or considered to be the same as a king or queen. Head of state, which means that the president is a king. As much as they tell you he's not, the president is a king. He's a head of state, but he's not. He's a puppet king. He does whatever somebody tells him to do, and by definition of capitalism, he's just doing what he's supposed to. So when people say, how is it that Joe Biden is not doing anything with his, that's one of the videos that caught popularity, where Consciously was on there, and I stitched it and talked a little bit about it, right? How is it that Joe Biden's not keeping his promises and doing stuff with student debt? He's a puppet. He told you one thing, and he's doing what they told you, what his real bosses told you to do. We're looking at it different. We're looking at it as if it's culturally, we're culturally out of place. Like we talked about before, like Dr. Lai Africa taught us and reminded us, you're not in your right mind. You're thinking that somebody else carries the same culture. You think that when the culture of the United States says a person, you think they're talking about you. A person is a corporation. So you can't even deal with a corporation unless you're a corporation. Are you legally a corporation? If not, as far as America's concerned, you're not sacred. So people that work for the corporation, right? The corporation is the person. So the corporation is the master over who? Who works for the corporation? People that are in debt. They're slaves. So the corporation is sacred, but the slaves are not sacred. That's why people are still fighting to see if they'll give you $1 more, in your pay. That's why they're still trying to figure out $1 worth of your pay. You fighting. When am I going to get 15 cents more on my raise? Like, you fighting for 15 cents because they don't care about you. Your life's not sacred. That's why we teach things as being sacred. Sacred is the key. We don't teach it just because. We don't live it just because. If it's not sacred, and once again, if it's not sacred, you won't live it. If it's not sacred, you won't defend it. You said I need to look up the term indentured servant. You look it up for me. And if you're trying to tell me that indentured servant is the same as a slave, you look it up for me. And if you're trying to tell me that indentured servant means that the way that a Roman did indentured servitude is the way that an Englishman did indentured servitude, means the same way that an American did indentured servitude, means it's the same way that a Ghanaian does indentured servitude, then you need to show me that too. Because indentured servant isn't what you want it to be. All right, my standard is different. This is why the series is part 21, and you can look up the other ones if you actually were coming on here to actually do that. But all you got to do is just look up what we've been talking about. I'm not talking about somebody else's culture. That's not my standard. This is called having been led as we believe. Right? So if you don't believe it, you have every right to not believe it. And I appreciate you. Even if you don't appreciate what we're talking about, I appreciate you. But it's not. I'm not here to argue somebody else's point of view. Right? Because your point of view might be attached to something that's not sacred to me. Your life is sacred to me, but what you might be attached to might not be sacred. Yeah, presidents are chosen by electoral college. Yeah, we know that. Thomas Jefferson told us that the reason why electoral college was created was because that they didn't trust people to make the right decision. So it's so if they think, matter of fact, like people tell us the truth. Like we can actually go back and listen to people. That's why the burden of proof is not on us. It's on those that came before us. We can go back and look at what people said. Don't forget, I believe it's Madison, the fourth president. Madison came outright and told people that, he told his constituency, he said, we need to stop telling people, or we need to make sure we're careful about what we're teaching people. He said, because if we tell people about this thing as far as democracy, he said people are going to get the wrong idea, and they're going to believe that democracy means that they are going to be able to vote and stuff like that and get whatever they want, and that they should have more rights. And the reality is when we're putting this together, the vote's not for them. And by the way, just if you look at pure statistics, who was even allowed to vote at the first vote in these first few presidents? You're talking about 6% of the population, and not all 6% voted anyways. And a lot of them were pressured into vote in certain places, and they used to change the stuff, especially more because you could write it down on paper. But the Electoral College was always there to make sure whoever they wanted to be president was president. So, the burden of proof is not on us. It's on those that came before us. These people, these presidents that set precedent, they told you what it's about. Right? I don't have to work that hard. I don't have to. It's not on me to prove it. You talk to them, so to speak. You let them tell you what they thought was sacred. If they were telling you that it's sacred for you not to vote, then why do you think your vote matters now? And you keep talking about what the founding fathers intended. We know what they intended. They told you. They told you by their actions. Right? They told you by their actions what they thought was sacred. You said now it's a state level chosen before the Electoral College. I mean, it still goes back to the Electoral College, right? At the end of the day, like your vote basically just says who supposedly they're supposed to make sure that they vote for. But the reality, that's what they said back then too, when they told you it didn't matter. So, you know, and at the end of the day, whoever you're voting in and all these people that we're saying supposed to make changes, where the change is at. The president's still just a public servant. You know, we hold the position of presidency to be sacred. That's why we're having these conversations. We think that the position of presidency is more sacred than the human being he's supposed to serve, because the president's just a public servant. Even if he's a king should be a servant of the people, right? But he's just a public servant. That's all he is. That's why he's limited. I don't care who it is. That's why I find it interesting. Like when people argue, people still sitting there talking about, well, Trump did this and he's the only president, blah, blah, blah. Trump is a public servant. Stop acting like he's the master. He wasn't supposed to teach you nothing. That's what master means. Like Trump wasn't supposed to teach you anything. Obama wasn't supposed to teach you anything. You're supposed to take care of yourself. When this sovereignty hit, when this personal accountability hit, they're not going to give you reparations. They've told you that they won't give you reparations. They tried to. It wasn't. As a matter of fact, it was somebody that didn't even like you. People talk about General Sherman. General Sherman gave reparations, and he didn't even like black people. You know why he gave reparations? He talked to 4 pastors, 4 black pastors that were slaves, former slaves at this point. Sat down, talked to him, and the pastor said, "We don't want anything from you. This is what got you sovereignty." He said, "We don't want anything from you." He said, "We're not looking for anything from you guys." They said, "We want land. We want the ability to teach our children. We want the ability to make sure that we are doing what's righteous. We want to be able to have our own security. We want to be able to teach ourselves." And General Sherman, who by the way would speak against black people later, right? He only did that. He only messed up the South the way he did because he believed that it should be a union. So he was fighting for the union. He wasn't fighting for you. He was fighting for the union. He wasn't fighting for you. So he finished fighting for us or whatever, and then went back to saying, hey, black people aren't level this and that or whatever. But he respected the fact that people asked for things for themselves. And so when they asked for things for themselves, he said, you know what, we're still in this, we still want to make sure that there's no chance the Confederacy coming back together. And also, hey, these people want to do things for themselves. That's not a bad thing. They need to learn, blah, blah. So he said, give them 40 acres and a mule. Lincoln would just go ahead and go along with what the general did. The general had the power. Right? Yeah, we're in a republic, not a democracy, which is a very good point, right? But by the way, even in a republic, which is a kingdom, also think about the fact, what does even democracy means? A demo is a little bit. Demo is a few people that live together, a few people that live together that give you a little bit, cressy government. So these few people that live together, they govern you by what they give you. Or a republic is a kingdom. Or put the two together, those who want to say democratic republic, and you're dealing with a few people that live together that give you a little bit, that govern you as kings or queens. Because he or she that has capital in capitalism is king. So that's what you're dealing with when you're dealing with the this democratic republic. That's what you're dealing with, a democratic republic, and that's what's sacred. That's why you got to figure out what's sacred or what's not sacred. Why are certain human lives devalued and other human lives valued? Figure out what's sacred. Why do we feel like you should take personal accountability for things? Because we believe that self is sacred. Learn about self and account for self. We believe that a community is sacred. So we account for community. We take care of community. We develop community. We're going to take care of self. That's what is sacred. Right? That's what's sacred. I don't believe in being a sovereign citizen. I believe in being sovereign. There's no such thing, and I get what you're saying, right? But there's no such thing as legally. The reason why I say it legally, there's no such thing as sovereign and citizen ever put together. A citizen is always separate from a sovereign. A sovereign is always separate from a citizen. A sovereign is in private law. A citizen is in public law. So I believe that you should be able to make sure you take care of yourself privately, and therefore you don't have to worry about somebody governing you. The Republican side should agree with that. And also as a Democrat being saying you should be able to do what you want, you should agree with that too. But for whatever reason, people have to be stuck on one side or the other. Yeah, I get your point. That's why I hopefully answered your question. And I told you the reason why. I don't get into that. So hopefully that answered the question. And they documented it too. Yeah. But you yeah, you got a sovereign and you got a citizen. It's two different things legally. And we're talking about, once again, the language. We're talking about the culture. Language is culture. If somebody writes out something, right, they're speaking a culture. When you sign something with black ink, it means something different legally than if you sign it with blue ink, than if you sign it with red ink, right? If you sign it with other colors, that's why some people say you can't sign this document in certain colors, because they're speaking language to you. Look that stuff up for yourself. They're speaking culture. They're telling you, hey, if you write this in red ink, understand it means da-da-da-da-da. They're saying if you write this in blue ink, it means da-da-da-da-da. If you write this in black, it means da-da-da-da-da. Why is it that when something's being lost, right, when you're hemorrhaging money, why do they call it that you're in the red? They're speaking of culture. They're talking about blood, right? And so money, when you're losing money, they put it in the red. That means to them losing money is as sacred as losing blood. That's the culture you're in. That's what they consider to be sacred. They're telling you without telling you. They're telling you really without teaching you. But they're telling you without telling you. Right? Like it's about what's sacred. And we can tell what's sacred by what you put first. And if it's not sacred to you, you won't put it first. You won't put yourself first if you don't think you're sacred. You don't have to check on me to see if I'm going to make sure that I'm ready to come on live. You know why? Because it's sacred. You don't have to check on me to make sure I'm going to be a husband to my wife. Why? Because being a husband is sacred, and my wife is sacred, and my family is sacred. Salah. Right? Pause and think about it. You don't have to check to see if I'm praying for you, because it's sacred. So even if it's every once in a while, every blue moon, you might get a text from me and it'll say, hey, praying for you, thinking about you, hope all is well. Because it's sacred. Because it's sacred, I respect it too much to not do it. That's the goal. All the stuff we're talking about, when something becomes sacred to you, you respect it too much not to do it. If you want to know what your enemy respects too much to not do to you, then you have to figure out what's sacred to your enemy. If you want to figure out if somebody's going to be for you, then there are certain lines that they will never cross. You know why? Because your relationship is too sacred for them to cross those certain lines. If something is sacred to you, you respect it too much to not do it. You respect it too much to not protect it. You respect it too much to not provide an environment for it. You respect it too much to not allow it to be put on the pedestal that you feel it deserves to be put on. If something is sacred, if your time is sacred to you, it will never be wasted. That's why when you come in front of this, you can see I've studied, I've meditated, I prayed about it, I thought about it, I listened to what's going on, I'm hearing the comment. Sometimes I answer a comment right away, sometimes I give it time and come back to it or whatever, so I can make sure that things are going on. Why? Because this platform, even, right, or what what we do through this platform rather, is what's sacred. This is virtual real estate. So even if I understand there's things that I want to go deeper in, but hey, TikTok, Facebook, YouTube, IG, the podcast we pay for, right? Patreon we pay for. But these things, if somebody has a problem with something, I'm saying, hey, I get it. I understand. I get that you don't want us talking about this. It's your platform. And if I want to use it, then I've got to understand that you say that this is what's sacred on your platform. So I might have to take some of this stuff and we might have to do it somewhere else. Right? I might have to, if I want to watch a video on here, you say I can't just watch videos on here with people and let's just have a conversation, especially if you got a bigger following than others, right? Because now you're dealing with copyright stuff and I'm going to get you in trouble. Hey, I get it. That's sacred. So guess what? I got to find a way. Can we do this on Twitch? Can we do this on something else? Oh, you safe. Love you. Right? So like if it's sacred, then I respect it too much to not do it. When you're talking about what's sacred to your enemy, you better comprehend what your enemy says is sacred. Thank you, Sister Patricia, right? You better comprehend what your enemy believes to be sacred. If you don't believe something to be sacred, or you don't know what your enemy believes to be sacred, then you don't comprehend the level that your enemy is willing to go to. Because one of the things that's different between us and our enemies is that the enemy is willing to die for what they believe to be sacred. Do you hear what I'm saying? They are willing to die. They are willing to kill. They are willing to overthrow. They are willing to kill, steal, and destroy. They are willing to die. They are willing to maim. They are willing to do whatever is necessary, right, to be able to make this stuff happen. They are willing to die. Right? That's the effort that they're willing to put in because of what they consider to be sacred. Right? They consider what they're doing to be sacred. If some look, I'm not talking about all, right? I'm not saying all white people. I'm not doing that, right? But somebody's KKK, they consider their oath to the KKK to be sacred. They are willing to die. You're not just dealing with somebody who's willing to kill. They're willing to kill because they're willing to die. It is sacred to them. Your being on the bottom and their being on the top is sacred. Right? Darwin, The Origin of Species, Theory of Evolution, the struggle for survival for favored races. His cousin coming up, eugenics. Them doing that around the time of Manifest Destiny, which, by the way, Rudyard Kipling comes right behind that, right? Or right around the same time. He comes up with something called the Jungle Book. Now, you think that the Jungle Book is only that one story with Mowgli. It's a bunch of stories in there, which that story of Mowgli is a little piece of, and you haven't really in the movie seen the whole story about Mowgli. It's a lot deeper than that. But Mowgli's story is supposed to be about Mowgli going back to men. Mowgli is supposed to represent white people. Right, that's what Mowgli is supposed to be, because Rudyard Kipling is actually somebody who was about manifest destiny. So much so that he wrote the United States of America when he found out the United States of America, when he saw the writing was on the wall, the United States of America was going to end up being very powerful. He said he wrote powerful people in the United States of America and said, please make sure that you keep teaching manifest destiny. Around that same time, we talked about eugenics being written by Darwin's cousin. Darwin's cousin will write about eugenics, and then somebody will come over to France and get something called an IQ test, intelligent quotient. Intelligence means information, so the information of certain people in France. And these people in France had came up with the IQ test because they wanted classism. They wanted to separate the people who were lower from the people that were higher. They came up with a test specifically to make sure that people stayed in their place. Somebody came all the way from the United States of America, liked what they were doing, studied it, brought it back, rewrote it, and said, give it to people all over America so that we can keep an IQ test where white people, what we hold to be information and intelligence that's important, is going to be something we separate from what black people consider to be intelligence and impertinent information. And we're going to teach schools to continue to be separated. Right? You're talking about a continued system. You're talking about stuff, not just manifest destiny, but you're talking about something literally called the white man's burden, where they used to teach. That's why the difference between Elohim and God. They used to teach that God himself, whatever God that is, because you can make God whatever you want him to be. But they said that it was by God or by their gods, or even by their deists, their men who thought they were going to become gods, that their gods had given them an assignment to make sure that white people were on top and black people were on the bottom. Like it's about, and they're willing to die and kill and do whatever it takes, spend whatever money it takes, take away whatever money it takes, right? Kill their own family members, fight against the British and the new American, even the new American, because the original American was a copper-colored person native to Turtle Island, but or to the America. That's the original definition. But they took over them, killed them off, took their spot, and said, we will say we're the American and fight against our own family and kill off our own family members so that we can continue to have slavery. They are willing to do that because they hold it to be sacred. They hold it to be sacred. Right? The enemy is willing to kill, to steal, and destroy. Right? They hold it to be sacred. OG says the only thing is sacred is of all God's creation is our blood. Okay. Well, if your blood is the only thing that's sacred, then what's the point of you talking about the Creator? Is the Creator sacred? I guess I get what you're trying to say. We're all one, but that's not the point. We just talked about that life is sacred, whether somebody agrees with us or not. That's not what the point of the exercise is. But I guess I get what you're saying. Manifest destiny was all about manipulation. Yeah. And by the way, people who consider themselves to be white people, they had to be taught that they were white people too, right? So they had to be taught, because don't forget, a lot of people didn't agree that just because you were black, you were bad. Matter of fact, if you look at, even though Greeks weren't necessarily white either back in the day by what we now define white to be, but people have to comprehend that, like Greeks and Romans even, but especially Greeks, used to say that they thought that the people they were learning from, which were Kemetic people and Carthaginians and eventually people we would call Moors and others, they said that they felt that they were more intelligent than the Greeks because they felt they had more melanin. Now the Greeks themselves were melanated. We have this weird, because of how people feed us stuff, we think of the Greeks being white. The Greeks, they wouldn't have identified with themselves to who you think are Greeks now. They wouldn't have done that back then. Hey again, you said, hoping you have a relationship with the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. You shall seek, okay. Yeah, I seek Elohim every day. Yahweh, and it's what? Shem, Yahweh, At Shem, Yashva HaMashiach, At Shem, Ruach HaKadosh. I'm thankful and grateful for that. So thank you. Even the word name means Shem in the Bible. So we definitely know about authorization. We appreciate it. You said all of God's creation. Yeah. Okay. Well, there's a difference between the creature and the sons. That's sacred too. Romans chapter 9 verse 6 tells us that not all Israel is Israel. 1 Corinthians 11 teaches us that there are people to be grafted in. Revelation chapter 7 tells us that we need to make sure that Israel is sealed, but that once Israel is sealed, everybody else needs to come on in. That's scripture. Romans chapter 8 verse 19 tells us that the creation is waiting on the manifestation of the sons of Elohim. So there are a lot of creation, but not everybody that's a creation is a son. Just because you're created doesn't mean you're automatically family. That's why a friend has the ability to stick closer than a brother sometimes. Doesn't mean a brother can't stick closer than a friend, but sometimes a friend might stick closer than a brother. So just because somebody's black, there's a whole saying, not all skin folk is kinfolk. And the reverse can be said as well, not all kinfolk is skinfolk. In other words, not all skin folk, not all black people are kinfolk, are going to be your family or are about righteousness just because they're black. And not all kinfolk, not all kinfolk, not all people you should consider to be family are skinfolk. Not all of them come from your blood. So, people come in and drop that and then go ahead and leave, Yeah, there's no color of white. Exactly. White originally just meant clear or bright. Or translucent, possibly, even. I guess translucent more. Is translucent? Yeah, translucent is what you can see through, not go through, right? Translucence, whatever. So, is the Father, our Creator, and Elohim the same? Elohim is talking about Abba, Father, Yashvai, Son, or Bar, and Ruach HaKodesh, Holy Spirit. So Abba is part of Elohim. Elohim is not Father, per se, right? Elohim is a title in which the Father is one of the manifestations of. The name of Elohim is Yahweh. The name of Elohim also is Yashvai, therefore, and the name of Elohim is also Ruach HaKodesh, the authority, name, the Shem of. Right? Also said they'll do whatever it takes to keep up their status. Right. He said our youth need to know how sacred their education is. That's crucial. Yeah, that's what we were talking about earlier. Breezy Mama said I'm Native American and Scottish, but I am white based on someone else's definition. Yeah. Yeah, and that's true too. That's why I say it's not as easy as that. By the way, even being Irish, we in the Irish community, and they took away the original Kofi _41 page, the original one, but on that page, we had a dynamic relationship with the Irish because we spoke truth about it. If you look at Irish and black communities, we've always fought for each other. There are not to say there aren't black people that don't like Irish people and there aren't Irish people that don't like black people, but that's like a very small amount, because Irish people, they came through oppression. And Irish people, I don't necessarily know if I roll with it all the way, but they'll tell you that, basically everything that was going to happen, and to some degree they're right, to some degree, that everything that would later happen to black people, they practice it on the Irish. So if you talk about like raping and stuff like that, that's what Englishmen did to Irish people. If you want to talk about, if you want to talk about, they don't go as far as to call it slavery because they don't want to be confused. They don't like to Irish people don't like to compare oppression. But if you talk about even slavery, they'll only give you indentured servant. But they had some people that were enslaved. Matter of fact, if you know about what happened in the Americas, there were a lot of Irish people that came over as indentured servants, and sometimes they were treated like outright slaves or being told they were indentured servants. Some of them fought with us to try and get freedom when they saw what we were going through, and they said nobody should go through that. So they actually worked with us and fought with us. And so some of the slave revolts that you hear about include Irish people. And some of them were even put in the breeding camps because they were like, oh, okay, you think you're going to be black? You want to be black? Fine. We're going to make you have black babies. That was their punishment. They had to live with us and be bred with us. Some of them, if you look at the Isle of Montserrat, Montserrat, look up Montserrat, and you'll see that over there you have black Irish, and that they sing Irish hymns, but they look like you and I. It's a relationship a lot of people don't know about. The Irish people, the reason why they came over when you had all this stuff, if you remember, I don't know how many people read this, but Irish people came over and made sure that when they were given the vaccine and stuff out, they made sure that not only the vaccine, but a bunch of money and stuff was given to help out certain native communities in the Choctaw tribe. It's because the Choctaw tribe had actually given some money to help Irish people. And so over in Ireland, they have a Choctaw statue that they keep up. That's a symbol of what the Choctaw did for them. So when they found out the Choctaw were being mistreated, they were like, yo, we got it. Now, whether you believe in the vaccine or not, I'm just trying to get you to see the mentality that they said we're going to come over. There are Irish people that died with black Mexican revolutionaries, knew they were going to die, could have left, and they would have been allowed to leave because they were considered to be white, still fought with the people to the death, knowing that they would die because they weren't going to let them be oppressed. Stories like that happen in Canada as well. So, it's not always as simple. That's why I say, you got to comprehend this thing goes deeper than just the color of your skin. We talk about the color of skin because it's something people try to debate or whatever, but it's not solely about the color of skin. But people can't hear us talk about this stuff at all. They hear anybody mention color, or they see the way I'm dressed, or see whatever, and they make the assumption that stuff like that. Oh, I'm sorry, you said American and Scottish. Scottish also too have I said Irish. I don't know why I went into Ireland. Sorry, you said Scottish. But Scottish also have somewhat of a different reputation. Now, Scotland, I would say, has a little bit more attached to England as far as English beliefs. But, the Scottish were also messed over, too. We got to understand people put this belief in people's minds. So there's a lot of stuff that comes out of this that you got to be careful. You said you were going to say some of them end up over here. You said, is Elohim and Christ the same? Once again, Christ is 1/3 of Elohim. So you could say when you talk about Christ, you got to talk about Elohim, but when you talk about Elohim, you have to talk about Christ. But Christ is a manifestation of Elohim, one of the three, right? So, that's what you're talking about. You have COVID for the second time. Sorry about that. Hopefully you're making sure you get some vitamin C. I just bought, I don't know if I have the bottle anymore. I just bought a thing. I meant to show you guys. I drank it yesterday, so I might not have it, or it might still be in the car. We went on a little hike yesterday, but it had vitamin C and vitamin E in it, and it was a certain grouping of things that work really well for you. It was like ginger, orange juice, apple juice, and a couple other things. But you can definitely do some things to help you out. And as you can hear, I probably sound a lot better than what I've been sounding. Still don't feel 100% all the way back. I haven't had COVID, but I've been going through a little bit as of late. But prayerfully, things will get better for you. Love that neighbor. Prayerfully, things will get better for you. People say they're praying for you right now. What does it mean to be sealed? It means to be sealed, to be put in your protection. When the king seals a document and says that you're authorized, right? You will roll a scroll together. And you would, you write whatever the declaration was, then you would roll the scroll up, and then you would seal it. So once you sealed it, that meant that, and when we're talking about that in Revelation 2, I'm going to see if I can do this off my memory. When you're talking, well, maybe I shouldn't. Let's just read it. We're not going to read the whole thing of Revelation, but when you're talking about Revelation and the seal, you're talking about a specific number of the seal. Remember, there were several seals. So Revelation chapter 4 is where you're dealing with Revelation chapter 4 is where you start dealing with the fact that there's a lamb, it starts describing what heaven looks like. And it tells us that there's a lamb that's slain, and this lamb that's slain is the only one that can open up the seals. Right. And so they start giving honor to the lamb that's slain and talking about how worthy it is. When you get to chapter 5, you start opening up the seals. Right. So the first seal that opens up is when you talk about those first 4 seals are dealing with the 4 horsemen. So you have the horseman that is, they ask in the beginning of Revelation 5, who's worthy to open up the seal. And then the elders John starts to weep because nobody can open up the seal. So John's not going to be able to see what needs to be revealed. And then one of the angels says, don't weep, because the Lamb is going to be able to open it up. So, and by the way, those who are on with us on the podcast, we got about 10 minutes before our time will be up. So we thank you. We appreciate you. We're grateful for everybody being on. And you can come on IG. You can come on TikTok. You can come on Facebook, or you can watch us later on Facebook, IG, or YouTube. But thank you for being on. We appreciate you. And just look up hashtag FindKofi if you need to find us on those platforms I just mentioned. So he starts to weep. And then all of a sudden, it says, so then all of a sudden, the Lamb begins to, give permission and talk about these seals, right? So once that happens, now you all of a sudden see in Revelation chapter 6, I'm sorry, I said chapter 5, Revelation chapter 6, where you see that the Lamb open one of the seals, right? And that's when you see the white horse that comes out. The white horse, talking about the people who are trying to conquer, right? So this conquering spirit. Then you see the second seal, right? When the second seal is open, then you see another horse that was red and it had power, was given to him that sat there on to take peace from the earth, and that they should kill one another. So now lack of peace, right? No peace is there. Right, and it's coming through the sword, a great sword. So if the first one is coming to conquer, right? This first spirit, this first seal, you're starting to see this thing of we got to conquer, we got to conquer, we got to conquer. Second thing that you're seeing, and now you're seeing this thing of okay, we have to start causing people to not be at peace. Conquering might have at least allowed some people to be, but now it's conquering married with no peace. We got to kill each other. Third seal is opened up, and you're dealing with, that. It's a black horse coming out, right, with a pair of balances, and basically dealing with the fact that there's no food, things like that, right? So now there's no food, and now everybody's broke, and now people can't afford food. It even says like 3 measures of barley, for a penny, and that was, and see thou hurt not the oil and the wine, right? So basically, like only certain people can afford certain food, things like that are coming out, right? Now then, the fourth seal is open up. The fourth seal, you're dealing with, death, right? So now it's just death. Death is coming up, right? It's death coming through the sword, the hunger, and all this stuff, but death, right? And even with the beasts of the earth. So not just the animals, the animals are dying as well, but even when it says the beasts of the earth, the beasts also too are talking about government as well. So you got 2 things going on, right? Then after that, once you get to the 5th seal, you're dealing with all the people that are under the altar, all these people that have been slain for the kingdom, all these martyrs who are saying, when is justice going to be given, and how long are you going to wait? And and it says that bright robes were given to them, and says, hey, just wait, because it's the time is coming soon, but things still need to be fulfilled, right? So then the 6th seal is then talking about, next after that, you have a 6th seal. The 6th seal is going to talk about that that now you're dealing with the earthquake and all these different things or whatever, and that, and heaven departed back, and it was like a scroll, and parasites need to be dealt with, and all these different things that are going on, and the wrath, and all these different things, right? And then we're still dealing with stuff. So after all these things, it says that now you see the angel, the 4 angels that are standing on 4 corners of the earth we talked about, and a 5th angel shows up, and having the seal, right? So we're talking about another seal, having the seal of what? The living Elohim, telling them not to hurt the earth until 144,000, which come from the 12 tribes of Yashdale, they have to be sealed, right? So now he's coming, and all these seals have been opened up, have been getting us to a place to where we have to make sure that Israel is first sealed up. We're unleashing these seals, which means all this stuff is coming out upon the earth realm. So the only way to protect, while we're unsealing certain things that have to come to pass, we can't allow the earth to be completely destroyed before first what? Israel has to be sealed. But after Israel is sealed, protected, it then says that there was a great multitude that no man could number of all nations and kindreds and people and tongues that stood before the throne and before the Lamb, clothed in bright robes and palms in their hands. Remember the palms, talking about that they said Hosanna, right? You know, saying that blessed, this is the King, right? We recognize who Yahshua is. So people who recognized this and cried with a loud voice, saying, salvation to our Elohim, which sitteth upon the throne, and unto the Lamb, right? And then those people are basically allowed to be protected. So you're dealing with those seals that were all opened up. And then there comes this last seal that's about to happen. But before that last seal of destruction can be opened, first things first, make sure Israel is sealed up. And who seals these things, or even can create the seal, or open the seal, or close the seal? Who's the only person that has authority to do that? That's the Lamb. Right? So Yahshua, who comes, son of David, who tells us in Revelation chapter 3, verse 7, that he is the son of, that he has the key of David. Revelation 3:9, he tells us that we've always been loved, and that he will have people sit at our feet to learn. Revelation 2:9, that tells you that, there are people that say that you are not who you say you are, and they say that they are Israel and are not. They say they are Hebrews and are not. He said, but they are the synagogue of our Satan. Those who say that and deny who you are, all those things are there, right? And so that's why when we speak on those things, we believe those things to be sacred. We don't believe the color of our skin or our hair or anything to be sacred just only because purely we're black and born black, even though that's part of what makes anybody sacred. If you're an Irish person and you are born with red hair, we believe that's sacred, that somebody shouldn't, bully you for that. If you're somebody who's designed, because people are designed to look different, so you might be designed to be, 130 pounds your whole life, and be skinny. Well, guess what? Like, that's sacred. We should make fun of you then. You might be designed to where, I don't know if you should be 400, 500 pounds, but you might be designed to be a beautiful woman and be 230, and we shouldn't get on you for that, whatever it is, right? Like we keep certain things sacred, but it's not just because of that. We also believe in bloodlines and where people come from and who people are. And so whoever you are, and if the Bible declares that a certain people must be sealed, we believe that to be sacred. But also, too, we believe once we're sealed, everybody else should be able to come in. That's what your Bible says, right? We believe that Israel should be protected, Revelation chapter 12. We believe that Satan's coming against us, Revelation chapter 12. We believe that there are people who worship Satan and therefore want us dead too, Revelation chapter 13. We believe they created a government that mirrors Satan, Revelation 12 and 13. We believe, we believe there's an antichrist spirit that's going to lift up government and lift up government that's intended to lift up Satan at the same time, Revelation chapter 13. We believe there's a spirit, a Nero Caesar spirit. Revelation chapter 13, last verse. Like we hold those things to be sacred. And we also believe that there's plenty of evidence and proof. Even if you want to go through the Bible and start counting up years, we believe that there's that if Yah said it, and if he through his prophets prophesied these things, and if these things are clearly here, that we believe that these things are clearly here. That's so that's why we look at these things as sacred. You said you think, Elohim, you've been eating ginger raw as well. Yeah, raw is always good. You said, Brother Kofi, just Yahshua HaMashiach, the Messiah, because many think white images when they hear Jesus. Well, yeah, I speak about Yahshua HaMashiach, but we talk about Jesus sometimes because a lot of people don't comprehend Yesus or Yesu was even a nickname that nobody really gave credence to until, Christianity became a thing. But I get you. And that's his name at the end of the day. Dr. Sabi, mucus reducing diet changed my life and the way I feel in general. Yeah. Oh, thank you, Sister Sonia. Yeah, if there is anybody that wants to make any donations or anything, we have, you can look at the Cash App info on the bio, but we actually have in the link for us. We have, if you look at our link, we have our link tree. So on the link tree, you can look up any information if there's anybody that wants to help us or bless us in any way. And we're thankful and grateful if you want to. It helps us to do things that we do around the world. Yeah, so that's what we're talking when we're talking about something being sacred. And once again, those who are on the podcast, we're probably going to lose you in about a minute or so. So thank you for being on. We appreciate you all, and you can come to the other platforms. But at this point, that's all I really have. I don't know if anybody has any questions, comments, or concerns. They go deeper. I don't mind being on here a little bit longer before we take our leave. And then I really do got to update some things that are updated but not posted yet to the site, or fully updated to be posted to the site. And make sure that we get some things done, and make sure that some things legally that I have to make sure take place this month so we can be on track. I want to get it done today, so we can be on track for Yah's Land Project 83, so I don't have to worry about it anymore for the rest of the year. But that's what we're talking about. When we're talking about sacred, we're talking about something different than what a lot of people think. When we say sacred, we're talking about something that we respect too much to not do. And you got to think about yourself. What are you not doing for self because you don't think that you're sacred? What are you not doing for your family because it's not really as sacred as it needs to be? What are you not studying because you don't think the word is as sacred as it needs to be, right? This is what we're speaking on when we're having this conversation, right? Being sacred. Being sacred is talking about something we're willing to do, right? Because there's stuff that's sacred to your enemy, and they'll make sure they treat it as such. Next holy day we're going to be doing is it's going to be Passover, really. On March 6th, we're going to ask the people start beginning to get leaven out of their house, anything that has leaven in it, because we do that, and it's a reminder to us to make sure we get sin out of our homes. House represents family, but really you're looking at the start for us is going to be April 15th. April 15th. And that's a Friday. And Shabbat, you should treat it as a Shabbat. So you're basically going to have Shabbat 2 days in a row, Friday and Saturday. But that's going to be a Friday that'll be on Zoom. And, we'll have little packages if people want, but, make sure that you get your lamb and get your bitter herbs. If you're somebody who doesn't, if you're vegan or going vegan this year or whatever, we'll make sure that we have something for you guys to be able to try and make, or if you want us to send you something that can be considered to be, like lamb equivalent or something like that, we can try and get that for you. We are going to be, and we will have more information about that. We're going to do it a little different this year because we're going to do something like, that is somewhat traditional out of the Black church that kind of goes with the 7 last sayings. If you guys never heard of that, it's something that we'll explain more and more about as we get closer to. But that'll be the next one. Then it says, what does it mean to keep Israel sacred? What is Israel? The country, the culture. Well, first of all, it's always the people. The people uphold the culture. The land is important to the people, but the people uphold the culture. So Israel has never been the land. And even the land, like your body is made out of dirt. So technically your body is land, which is why people try to own people. So you have to be careful what people put in you or what people get you to sign to, because they can technically own you if you sign away, because you're signing away your real estate, your land. Your body is the temple, is the land that houses the temple, the natural resource that houses the Most High, right? So when we talk about keeping Israel sacred, we're talking about keeping the individual sacred and the community sacred. Always remember that no community is greater than the individual. No individual is greater than the community. So when speaking about Israel, we have to speak about the culture. And it's up to us to keep up the culture. It's up to us that no matter what land we live in, no matter how many times we get together physically or not, it's always up to us as individuals to keep up culture and to defend the society. And the society, therefore, will be in a place where we can defend the individual, right? So that's who Israel really is. It's the people. It was always the people, anyways. And those that be grafted in, they could be considered to be part of Israel, but you have to make sure that you are on track. You have to be adopted. Just like even if you're a king of Israel, right? Like if you're a king and you have another king that's coming up or whatever, you have to understand that your king is like the next line. So the next person in line to be king, they have to be adopted into the role. The king has to say, this is who I want to be king. He has to say it verbally, and then he has to make sure that the people agree, usually, as well, right? But you don't just get to be king just because you're born. Some people think that, right? That's what the goal is to have your lineage continue out of your loins, but you have to have other people, or you have to teach him enough to make sure that, or if it's a queen, regardless, you have to make sure that they're taught correctly and that they can become the king or queen. And then the people who are going to be subject have to then be in line with them. And that king or queen has to be held to a higher standard than everyone else, or it doesn't work, right? Kavad said, we're still in the land of our captivity. We can't do all our laws. Well, once again, that's why you start working on getting land, and you get micronation, and you make sure that it's, under a religious sect, and you make sure that you comprehend, what it is. Even if it's a person that owns your stuff, and you all fall under the person, and you write some contracts that says that everybody will be obedient, or you make sure it's under a religious sect, or whatever. You make sure that you have a plan for the elderly. Once you have a plan for the elderly, you can give up your Social Security number. Like, these are things that can happen, but you can't, when people are talking about in the land of our captivity, before it was the land of our captivity, it was ours anyways. If you talk about who Taino people are, and having a Hebrew interpreter come over with Christopher Columbus, and Paleo Hebrew being found in places in South America all the way up to the Bering Strait, we have to, the people are going to be the reason why these things happen. We have to make the decision that we're going to do it no matter what, no matter who's trying to do something to us. Yeah, Minister Tamara. Yeah, she's gonna have a list for us because she's been keeping that for quite some time. But yeah, she's got some things we're gonna be working to get you guys before. We still got a little time before March 6th, but we're working on making sure we get some things out to you guys as far as you can see. But yeah, she's talking about yeast products or leavens. So baking powder, malt, yeast. You can find different things that don't have those things, but you'd be surprised how much stuff you're even eating that has all these things in it. But we'll make sure that those things are explained and all that good stuff for you. Let's see. So like we said, we'll try to come up with a list, but you can just research it. Research what leaven is. I can just I'm gonna just do a quick Google search. Just quick Google search of what has leaven in it. Right, so something, basically, so this says a list, and this is just the first thing that pops up. You can obviously do more research, but this is stuff that's also known as rising agent. So if you see something that says a rising agent or whatever, you can research what rising agents are. This doesn't have to start happening until March 6th, by the way, but just to let you know. So also known as rising agents, leavening ingredients interact with other ingredients to food to form bubbles. So by the way, like stuff you wash with, some soap sometimes, something that was brought to my attention I never thought about until last year when we were preparing, detergent, clothing detergent, things like that, right? But so some Christian people recognize the 7-day feast. This is what this is saying, right, of unleavened bread, which occurs after Passover, which we recognize as well, by ridding their diets of leavened foods as a way to try to live more like Yashveh. Hebrew people eat unleavened foods to remind them of the hasty retreat out of Kemet, which didn't leave them time to let bread rise. To uphold these religious values, some people's food are off limits during certain times of the year. Okay, here we go. Foods that contain yeast. Yeast is... Okay, there are foods are referred to as hametz, Hametz. According to the Northern Hills Synagogue, beer, alcohol, crackers, donuts, pancakes, waffles, and some types of breakfast cereal also might contain yeast. Foods with baking powder or baking soda. Baking powder and baking soda are added to bread and muffins, including quick breads that don't call for yeast. Any food with either of these ingredients is considered leavened. Now that can be, basically, I don't know. I would say leaven. People will argue about this. I would say leaven is anything that causes something to rise. Some people would say no, not necessarily. But I mean, we're trying to make sure if we have flat stuff that doesn't rise, because in this sense, rise is like puffing itself up, culturally speaking. But yeah, pancakes, waffles, crepes, homemade cookies, cupcakes, and brownies. I'm sorry. Yeah, okay, yeah, they also have it. Foods that contain bicarbonate of soda, right? So foods that contain bicarbonate of soda, sodium bicarbonate, or double-acting baking powder are also leavened. So bread starters, sourdough starters, are made by combining water, sugar, flour, and with yeast. The starter is later used to make sourdough bread. Both the starter and the bread are leavened. All right. So there's a lot of different stuff you can look at, but we'll have lists and things coming out. But that's just the first thing, like just doing a quick Google search, can give you a bit of information to kind of help you on that journey and start getting you mentally prepared for it. Also Minister Chairman says many processed foods, snacks that have yeast, malt, baking powder, and baking soda, most definitely. You said so I can't brush my teeth with baking soda. I mean, if you're trying to go off of something that's not a rising agent, that would be, for those 40 days. There's other things you can do. Matter of fact, when it comes to brushing of teeth, you can use bark to chew on. You can obviously still use your toothbrush no matter what. Really, you don't want to hopefully you're brushing your teeth with water that's cleansed in some way, shape, or form, or because water that you're using is going to have chlorine and what's the real one I'm looking for? Fluoride and different things like that, which is not good for you. Matter of fact, fluoride is in a lot of your toothpaste, but there's natural things you can do too. Like if you want to do charcoal, like something I'm going to do this year, as I'm just going to get some bamboo. And I'm going to take the bamboo and burn it, and that'll be my charcoal. And I'll have some charcoal that'll have, baking soda with it, and then I'll have some that'll just be the charcoal by itself, the burnt bamboo. And that's a real natural way of being able to do it. You can, you can even get away with just making sure you're taking enough calcium and magnesium in your diet so that stuff can be digested correctly. And literally just brush your teeth with a dry brush. But it depends. I know some people are going off of my teeth need to be extremely extra white, and you consider that to be healthy. White with teeth doesn't necessarily mean it's healthy, especially the way most people whiten their teeth. But I get it. Even culturally, there are tribes in Africa to where, what's considered to be attractive is to have dark gums, dark skin, but extremely white teeth. So I get it that it's a cultural thing too, that you want to do that. But there's a lot of different ways that you can make sure that you're, cleaning yourself and cleaning your teeth and washing yourself without having to have leaven attached to it. They put leaven in everything on purpose. Yeah. What I didn't say is necessarily, not all of that is bad. I'm just saying as far as, a lot of people don't know fluoride's in the water, chlorine in the water. So when you're brushing your teeth, a lot of times you just do it out the sink, right? But when you go into the sink, you're using fluoride, or if you're using fluoride in your toothpaste. And fluoride is something they know to be poisonous. They just started, but when they started putting fluoride in toothpaste and everything, and in water and everything, what was happening is you had certain factories that kept having a buildup of fluoride. They had all this fluoride, and they were throwing it away, but then somebody came with a bright idea, which is usually how stuff gets entered into your system. Hey, instead of using fluoride, right, this is why we got to figure out what's sacred and stuff and figure out what people are doing to us. They were like, instead of using or throwing away fluoride, why is there any use for it? And they were like, well, it's poisonous, this and that. But then they came up with this idea, well, maybe it's poisonous, so it'll poison the things in the water, right? With a wink and a nod type thing. And that became, okay, we'll just say that it's good to put in water, or it's good to put in toothpaste, or it's good to put in this, or it's good to put in that. But yeah, fluoride is not great for you in any way, shape, or form. Chlorine obviously isn't. But yeah, there's tons of different ways to make sure that you're taking care of your teeth. Matter of fact, if you're brushing your teeth, but you don't have calcium in your diet, you're going to end up losing your teeth anyways. So you need to have a heavy diet of calcium regardless. Calcium is supposed to come through a lot of green stuff that we eat, but because people don't grow stuff correctly, you don't necessarily get what you're supposed to get out of it. But yeah, you said you just eat meat and veggies at that time? We've only been awake a couple years, but we have a list of snacks like Doritos that have leaven. Yeah. Oh, okay. Somebody just said it's snowing in the DMV, so if you're up in that area, be careful. If you're in the New York area, be careful. I don't know if it's snowing in the Carolinas and stuff like that. I don't think it's snowing any further south than that, at least on the East Coast. Oil pulling for alternative teeth health. Okay, I didn't even think about that, but yeah, I've heard about it. I can't say I've used it. My wife probably knows about that. But yeah, so those are just things to keep up with. But yeah, we'll have those things. We'll have all that stuff ready to go, and lists and different things for you guys to look at. We'll put it up on YouTube as well. We'll put a nice little explanation of it. Oh, you said it's a toxic form of fluoride? Okay. Yeah, leavening. Yeah, leavening isn't bad. Like we were talking about, leavening isn't bad. Or I didn't get to that part of it. Dan, thank you for that, Minister Tamer. We're not saying leaven is bad. We're saying we, as a people, as a group, we try to make sure that when we get to, you know, March 6th, basically through April 15th, that's Passover, and then for a week after that through April 22nd, we're trying to make sure that we follow the law and also the tradition and the customs, right? And make sure that what Yah told us to do, that we keep doing it, right? It's something that's described. People try to call it communion now, but it wasn't supposed to be. Communion was supposed to be a full meal, and it was supposed to be Passover. So Paul even talks about it in his quote unquote New Testament in 1 Corinthians chapter 11. There's often times, if you've been in church, you've heard it read to you probably a lot, and probably never knew that's what they were reading to you because they called it communion, but it's talking about Passover. You know that on the day that he took bread and did this and that or whatever, right? And if man's hungry, first let him eat at home. You know, that's what we're talking about. So, but we'll be talking about that more and more as we get closer to things. So, amen. So, but we're gonna go ahead and I think I'm confusing people's statement. Breezy Mom, I think I confused what you were saying earlier. Anyways, I apologize for any mistakes that I might have made. Hopefully you guys got the gist of what I'm saying. But we thank you, we appreciate you. And we're getting back to the way that the Most High wants. We have our information up above my head. I don't know if it's as hard to see as it is on mine because I got so much extra stuff that pops up when you're the person doing the live. But up top we have Cash App, which if you want anything to do with any donations or anything we're doing, if it's come to classes that we're coming up on January 31st, Yah's Land Project 83, whatever it is, we have our information if you go to the bio. And also if you go to we have our... what is it called? Linktree. So we have a Linktree up there for you guys, and the Linktree, has all the information. If you want to go to different things that we have, my wife has been diligent in helping me out with making sure that if anybody wants any information, not just with donations, but website, whatever, to find us in different platforms. Facebook information thing is on there. I think IG information is on there. I think the YouTube information is on there, etc. So if you want to find out what we're doing, you can go there. You can also contact us by texting us at 410-714-5078. You can call if you want, but it's a lot easier to be able to text us. I'll usually get that a lot quicker. The way that the system is set up to bounce to my phone, because there's others that help us out with that. Also, too, there's a 202 number that we have. It's 202-599-7312. Again, that's 202-599-7312. Again, I say that's 202-599-7312. Last time, that's 202-599-7312. Don't forget to check out my wife, the Honorable Maya. You can check her out at Bloom and Flourish, not A-N-D, but the letter N, Bloom and Flourish. You can follow her on TikTok, YouTube, and her website. And she's a herbalist, a healer, a chemist, and a biologist by degree. And we're thankful and grateful for everything she does for the community. And so I believe, I don't know if I'm going to say this right or not, the tincture for the month we just came out of was ginkgo. I believe the tincture of the month now is called I Am Healed. Or so, I might be saying the wrong thing, but I think that's the name of the tincture. Is that it, babe? I Am Healed. It's still taking me a while. I don't know. I keep wanting to go back to ginkgo. I have ginkgo in my mind now. It's automatic. Prayerfully, I got that correct. But, if you'd like to find out more information about that, please make sure that you get in contact with us. The classes, by the way, that are coming up. I am immune. I'm going to get there. It's going to be in my spirit. It's going to come in there. I am immune. So if you'd like to be able to talk to her about that and find out what that is and what's inside of it, you can contact us. We can make sure you get her information as well. And the class is coming up January 31st for those that are interested. Some of you have already gotten in touch with us, but those who are interested, you got Hebrew characters. You have basic Hebrew as far as the language. You have so Hebrew characters is learning basically the alphabet, learning the characters. A lot of people don't know, like you have the alphabet, you have Hebrew characters, there's 22 of them, and they all have certain meaning. So you learn a little bit of Hebrew language, but we got to make sure you at least bare minimum know the Hebrew characters. Second class is Hebrew language, basic Hebrew, not extreme Hebrew and all that, not Hebrew 3, like, basic Hebrew. Excuse me. The next class, then we have Sovereignty 1, We have sovereignty 2. We have natural medicine 2. We have basic French and cryptocurrency. So those are the classes coming up. Just get in contact with us. Reach out to us. Those of you who sent me some text or whatever over this weekend, as I said, I was going to rest some, and Sundays are always my family day anyway. So I have seen some of your stuff, but did not necessarily get back to you. But I am aware of some of the things you need me to get back to you about, and you should be hearing from me today. Is usually I kind of use Mondays as a day to catch up after being able to rest a little bit, and especially after Friday, being watch night, and then Saturday, still having our routine and everything. I definitely needed some rest, but I'm thankful and appreciative for you guys. Thank you for your prayers. Thank you for your comments, questions, concerns, all those great things. As always, our prayer is that you not just heard this word, but you be a doer as well. And so we're thankful and grateful to each and every one of you. We appreciate the King, Queen in each and every one of you. And as always, this has been Pastor Kofi, aka the Shadow Band One. Sorry, I'm trying to get out of the habit of saying that. This has been Pastor Kofi, Pastor, servant to Christ, for we are always changing lives one mind at a time, but being a voice of the voiceless and speaking the unspoken until I have the great privilege, opportunity, and responsibility of being in front of you all again. Please remember, as always, that you are loved, you are necessary, you're majestic, you're fearfully and wonderfully made, and you, which is all of us working together, will be the reason why people who are in the system no longer have to be of it. Shalom, family. Take care.